Good evening, everybody. I'm Cynthia Elliott. I'm Vice President for the Rochester Board of Education, actually assuming the role of the President, Van White, who is at the funeral of his mother who passed away. And so we continue to send our condolences to President White and wish him well, and for him to hurry back to Rochester. So having said that, want to welcome our audience to the Rochester Board of Education. And also before we start, we just celebrated some great young women in our Women's History Month. So I want to just do another shout out to those young women. I want to be able to call them by their names so that the people who may not have been able to participate in the Women's History Month that we had earlier today will know who these great women are who received the Susan B. Anthony Leadership Award. Those recipients are Deshawn Vasquez, Janilamar Gonzalez, Melody Confessor, Jaslyn Morales, Wani Medusa, Salah Alamari, Elizabeth Benoit, Kirsten Simmons, Sierra Stevens, Dejanique Rosa, Karis Carr, and Beautiful Four. Just great women, great stories, overcoming various challenges and still achieving their goals. And as I said during that celebration, you know, those are the ones that we selected for this evening, but I am confident that we have thousands of these of people who, of our students who are doing the same and making the same kinds of achievements. And so while you may not have been recognized this evening, we do honor you and just encourage you to continue to doing the great work and achieving the goals that you have for yourself and for your family. So again, congratulations to the women of the Susan B. Anthony Leadership Award. So with that, we'll do our act of reverence and say, those who want to say the Pledge of Allegiance, I will give you this opportunity to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Are there any upcoming board events, Kalia, that I need to have you to share with our audience?
Yes, there are. I'm just going to pull up on my screen right now some of the events that are coming up in the month of, well, we're about to enter April, so that's what we're sharing right now. So just coming up next, the next meeting will actually be in April because there are no board meetings scheduled for break week. So next week, we want to say, have a wonderful break week for all of our students and our staff. And the board will rejoin the public on April 6th with our policy and governance meeting. Just before that meeting, however, there are budget events because we are heavy into our budget season, and the board will be reviewing the operational and general support budgets and doing a deliberation session on that. The following day, which is a Wednesday, which is not normally a board meeting day, is going to be another deliberation session, which is dedicated to the instructional and special educational budgets. And then there will be a question and answer review of that. We do have our public budget hearing on April 8th, and we welcome all members of the public. If you're interested in speaking about the budget, which is now posted to the district's website, to sign up to speak. And you may do so by contacting the board office by noon of April 8th and indicating that you would like to speak. No other topics but budgetary items will be accepted for this budget hearing. On April 20th, there is the Finance Committee meeting, and there is also a budget deliberation session on the school's budgets. That does include the East EPO budget as well. And the board will have a deliberation session during the Finance Committee on those topics. We will also have a public hearing on the Code of Conduct on April 22nd, and that is really important for members of our public to know. The Code of Conduct has been under review for quite some time, and the members of the public are welcome to speak about that during that public hearing. So please sign up to speak by noon of April 22nd. And then we have our business meeting on April 22nd, starting at 6:30. So those are our board events, and you may view all the board events on rcsdk12.org/board calendar, BOE calendar. This is just a reminder for those who wish to speak that you may call 262-8525, or you may email Board of Education at rcsdk12 by noon of the day of the meeting for those things. And we are recruiting again for our board committees. And right now we are still trying to find 2 parent representatives for our audit committee, 1 representative for CIGR, 1 for finance, 1 for ESA, and 2 for policy and human resources at this time. So if you are interested, please visit the website rcsdk12.org/BOE parent rep. And you can access the application materials there and read some more information about the board committees. And that's it, Commissioner Elliott.
Thank you, Kalia. Now the second item on the agenda is the acceptance of the minutes. The February 25th minutes are not available at this time. They will be forthcoming in the near future, but can I get a motion for the March 9th, 2021 Charter School public hearing, the Genesee Community Charter School, Flower City campus. Is that all one, Kalia? Yep.
That is
so
one.
Can I get a motion for, can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. It's been accepted. And so Kalia, I'll turn it back over to you to welcome our speaker.
Yes, we do actually have 2 speakers tonight. I'm going to welcome Desiree Garrick, a student who is going to be addressing the board tonight on in-person AP tests. Welcome, Desiree. And congratulations on your college acceptance.
Thank you.
You have 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'll go ahead and start. Good evening, everyone. My name is Desiree Garrick. I'm a senior at East High School, and I'd like to address the board regarding decisions being made about AP exams. I'm not sure if a decision has been made and is set in stone, but I want to ensure that you all hear from a student with previous experience with AP exams. And for exams this year, there are 3 options: in person, in a paper and pencil, 3 hours long, and 2 digital dates where students are either at home or in school, which are also 3 hours long. I'm not sure if decisions are being made as a whole for a district or building by building, but I want to tell everyone under the sound of my voice that the later dates are which are in the last week of May and the first week of June, are the best options for us students. AP content is very hard to get through as is, but because of our unfavorable conditions and learning experience this year, we've been placed in a deeper disadvantage. I know personally in my AP course, we most likely will not get through all of our content by May 3rd. So I plead with you all to encourage the later testing dates. Also, I would like to extend an invitation to Dr. Jallo to visit East High School so that students can meet her and understand the plans, understand her plans and hopes that she has for our district. And I'm quite sure that in our meeting with her, we will be able to find ways in which students can help and better assist Dr. Jallo in the movement towards equity for our district. At East, they teach us to advocate for ourselves and others. And tonight I'm advocating for my peers. There are a number of students at East who want to know how they can help enact change and equity. And by inviting Dr. Jallo to meet with us, it'll help us students to better understand. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Desiree. We appreciate your comments tonight. Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to welcome our final speaker, who is Mary Starpoli, a parent who will be addressing the board regarding reopening plans and district communication. So Ms. Starpoli, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, whenever you're ready, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mary Starpoli, and I'm a parent leader. I want to start by thanking you all for the massive effort I know it took to open school buildings and bring some students back and to get district sports opportunities back up and going. Attending school 2 days a week has made a world of a difference in my daughter's mental health and motivation. And she's also playing volleyball, and it's been an absolute lifeline for her and her teammates. But I think of the thousands of students still stuck at home after more than a year, isolated or struggling and deprived of these connections. I think of a friend of my daughter's who's a sophomore at SOTA. When the survey phone call came back in December, his mom doesn't speak English, and without checking with him, his older sister answered the call and told the caller that he would stay remote. And it has left him completely stuck. He's desperate to get back to school, especially since he's an art major and doesn't have the materials at home he needs to participate in art class. Thankfully, he's had a chance to play basketball, which has been a lifeline for him. But in this messed up reality that we're in, he can play sports 5 days a week, but can't go to school. And this is, just one situation among thousands, many that are much more dire, I'm sure. And I think the district just needs to rectify the unjust and unequal way that this process has been handled, starting with a very seriously flawed survey process back in December. And I don't think you can call it a reopening until all families who desire to do so are asked again and offered a chance to return. To leave families without an option for the rest of the school year would, I think, be unfair and irresponsible, given what we know our students are facing with chronic absenteeism now, mental health issues due to the prolonged absence from school. I also question, and I think the district should be asking itself, whether it's even legal to deny students the opportunity for in-person learning at this point when the rest of the state has reopened. So what are the plans? Will all students be given the opportunity to return in Q4 and beyond the school year? What are the plans for summer programming? Will the federal relief money be used to provide intense academic and social emotional support to help our kids recover and be prepared for the fall? What are the discussions and plans that are being talked about for the fall? Will our kids be back in school full time? Many local districts are returning 4 or 5 days in person this school year. And with the federal relief money that's coming in, funding, I don't think can be an excuse for RCSD not fully reopening in September. As parents in this district, we often feel really completely in the dark. And during this pandemic, when our kids' lives and education have been on the line, there has been too little information and too much confusion about what is happening. So there may very well be plans in the works, but we wouldn't know it because we're not told. We need transparency. We need regular updates from our superintendent and regular opportunities for parents to ask questions and get answers. Robocalls are not enough.
Thank you, Ms. Darapoli. I apologize, but your time is up for tonight. But we do welcome, it does look like you have written down all your comments. So if you would like to send that to the email address, we would appreciate you submitting that so we can send it over to the board.
Thank you.
Post it for you.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Have a good night. Vice President Elliott, back to you.
Thank you, Kalia. So the next item on the agenda is our advisory council reports. And so we are here from our student representative for the Student Leadership Congress, Anaya.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Anaya Simmons, and I am president of Student Leadership Congress. This is the official report for Student Leadership Congress's latest meeting on March 24th of 2020. On our agenda, we had introductions, a community check-in, the superintendent's forum, guest announcements, and a presentation on rezoning from Dr. Morris. At this meeting, we had representatives from School of the Arts, World of Inquiry, Edison Career and Technology, East Upper School, Wilson Magnet, Leadership Academy, Rochester Early College, and Northeast College High School in attendance. During the community check-in, students on the call expressed that they were happy for the change in weather. The sunshine and warmer temperatures have people working outside. Students also shared some of their plans for the upcoming spring break, which included catching up on schoolwork, relaxing, and reading books for pleasure. During the meeting, Superintendent Meyer Smalls was able to present her update on the RCSD budget process. This year's budget will increase support for academic performance of students. There will also be a community forum to share the budget and take feedback from the community. The superintendent invited us to the forum. Deputy Superintendent Martinez Davis is currently working on reopening plans for the district, as well as getting out in the community to get feedback from different groups. The superintendent shared with us that she is working with local officials, the United Way, and Common Ground Health to see what we can do to improve this food in our schools. The district is also looking to deliver a youth risk survey. The county normally conducts a survey, but this year will not due to COVID. She is hoping that the SLC will help support the survey by encouraging students to complete it. The superintendent discussed her recent meeting with principals to look at our senior class tracking systems and determine how they are doing in school. They are looking at classes that students are not doing well in and how to make them more appealing and interesting to our students. Superintendent was able to respond to the Congress's questions. Students expressed that their voice often feels overlooked in the process of planning improvements. We also suggested that teachers should reach out to high school students directly when they are not doing well in school so that they can make their improvements. Students shared that the SEL time they received during the remote learning schedule was very helpful. This time gave students the opportunity to catch up on work, reach out to students, and a break to rejuvenate during the day. Students expressed that there are too many technical terms used during the budget meeting. The superintendent agreed, and Mercedes, communication graphic designer and SLC advisor, was able to pull out the glossary terms of the budget book and place it on the district's website so that it was more accessible. Guest announcements. Mr. Ricky Frazier announced that Joshua Rashard McFadden, an acclaimed local photographer, will host a panel discussion for RCSD students in May with a focus on social justice. Ryan Keating and Shawnee Mitchell, president of the Black Bar Association, shared that they are interested in starting a social justice initiative in our school. They have 4 ideas that include roundtable discussion with students, lawyers, judges, and other justice system positions. Develop a mock trial position, again with the focus on social justice, so that students can get experience in the legal field. Participation in Rochester's teen court, and mentorship programs that allow for shadowing and possibly internships. We discussed the potential opportunities for them to connect with students to gather more feedback. The Department of Education and Learning will be focusing their work around the district's strategic plan. They will be monitoring our schools very closely, looking at the data on a regular basis. And the plan for next school year, they will be looking at how we can connect and support with the New York State Next Generation academic standards. Plans for the Department of Teaching and Learning is looking at all of our materials, which includes textbooks and curriculums, to ensure it is properly upgraded to include cultural relevance and quality for our students. Part of the rezoning process will include hosting meetings and working with newly formed rezoning task forces. Students have been invited to participate on the various committees, and that will be hosted by the task force. They will also be looking at the work that is already completed on rezoning over the past years. April 5th is the first community meeting for the rezoning task force. Students asked Dr. Morris if they would consider a sequence of classes that are offered in the district to give students more options as they are looking at our schools. Students also asked Dr. Morris to make sure virtual class offerings are more user-friendly for students who are taking them outside of their normal school load. On the 21st, I attended a community-wide youth leadership coalition run by Kilolo Maya White of the Brought the Future. This is an initiative that is supporting youth leaders from various Rochester community programs to develop new leadership abilities and provide unique opportunities for our growth. I would also like to acknowledge the success of Learning Pods and the effect it has had on not only my school, but district schools. Vice President Elliott, at this time, I have no comment on the following board resolutions.
Thank you, Anaya. And the next report will be from the Parent Leadership Advisory Council. Kenyon?
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. First of all, I want to give a shout out to Commissioners LeBron, Malloy, and Clark for reaching out to PLAC's Executive Council. We had some good one-on-one conversations with them. I wanted to also thank Commissioner Adams for showing up to our meeting last week. We're looking forward to speaking with all the other board members individually when time permits. On March 17th, we had a very well-attended meeting, and that meeting generated many questions from parents, and I'm going to speak about 3 of them. Firstly, the school district is owed almost $300 million from the federal government. A need for an expanded summer program was a common theme even before the latest federal bill, the American Rescue Plan, became law. I'm going to echo what a parent said at Tuesday's meeting during her public comments. Parents really want to see that money allocated for use for a summer bridge program to address learning loss. Learning loss is very real. Second of all, a few parents pointed out a contradiction to me. The school choice deadline is April 2nd, but the school zone reconfiguration public hearing is on April 5th. So we want to know, does that leave the possibility that a school could be rezoned after parents pick a school or the school is picked? And number three, RCSD needs more accountability for clear and consistent communication. Communication seems to be siloed instead of integrated. I'm going to use a parent at School of the Arts as an example. This parent opted to be waitlisted for in-school learning. About a month ago, she was asked if she could provide transportation to get her daughter to school. After answering no, that she would need a bus, she got no other response. Fast forward to last Thursday, while her daughter was at home, remote, she got a call from the school asking her why her daughter was not there. Obviously, this parent was very dismayed. And come to find out, the next day, she got a letter from transportation saying that a bus had been approved for her. You all can see the issue there. In a district with over 20,000 students, how many other examples of miscommunications like this are there? I have no idea. And that's the end of my report. That's all I have for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner LeBron, are you going to be giving the bilingual education report?
I am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I printed the report from Mina Gonzalez, who's the president. It says, good evening, buenas noches. I'm Mina Gonzalez, the president of the Bilingual Education Council. Thank you for this opportunity to share some of the council's activities. We are bilingual parents, community-based organizations, and educators representing and advocating for the educational rights to a quality bilingual education for our students in the district. The council continues to actively advocate for equity in bilingual education and supporting the needs of our students and families during the pandemic and virtual learning period. In March, due to COVID restrictions, the BEC meeting was hosted via virtual meeting via Zoom. The Bilingual Education Council Executive Cabinet met on March 4th. The presidents of the Special Education Parent Advisory Council, CPAC, and the Parent Leadership Advisory Council, PLAC, joined the meeting for a meet and greet amongst parents leaders. Each president shared their vision and historical background of the parent groups. Parent leaders discussed opportunities for cross-collaboration. Parent leaders have requested for the Office of Parent Engagement to coordinate a quarterly meeting for parent group leaders. The BEC Executive Cabinet met briefly to coordinate their March and April parent meetings regarding graduation requirements and student work opportunities, as well as review the budget with Carlene Pierce that will occur in the latter meeting. The next BEC meetings will need to be focused on the budget and to review and discuss any potential impact on bilingual education. We will coordinate meetings with the superintendent and the finance director. We also look forward to actively engaging with the administration in the selection of a permanent principal for Monroe Upper. The position was posted and the posting will close March 31st. We have engaged with the district and anticipate that we will be invited to the school-based committee end of April or early May. Parents continue to be overwhelmed by the technology challenges supporting their children with classwork and just managing day to day. We are deeply concerned over learning loss, failing grades, and the challenges teachers are experiencing with management of online and in-person learning. We look forward to learning more about reopening plans and summer learning opportunities as many parents have inquired. In addition, we have received several complaints that robocalls regarding attendance are only coming in English language. We will coordinate with staff to look further into this matter as this was just brought to our attention. Several schools continue to not have their BEC representatives as required by the BEC bylaws, and it is important that each bilingual school have 2 BEC representatives to help advocate for the needs of parents and students in those schools. That concludes our report. Muchas gracias. March 25th, 2021. And then I just want to add for the record, I know that several commissioners have inquired about when the BEC Council Act meets, and they meet on the 2nd Tuesday of each month. And I have requested a link, and we'll send those out, and we will probably have to coordinate. And just for any board members who have not gone, it is done in Spanish, and then there's someone translating in English. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. The next item on the agenda is a presentation by our state monitor, Dr. Jallo.
Actually, you're going to turn it back over to me so that I can do the intro to Dr. Shelley. It's on the agenda. So I think we turn it back over, and then I'm just going to give a preface to the community about Dr. Jallo presenting and why. And so as many people already are fully aware, we have been appointed a state monitor to work with the district over the course of the next 3 years. And per the legislation language that is there with the appointment is that Dr. Shelley Jallo has to present to this board and to this community her findings on the budget that was presented. And so this is just a high level overview, and I'm sure that Dr. Jallo will continue to give input throughout the process as well. And then Dr. Jallo, I do believe that your recommendations and findings also have to be made public for the community to give public input as well. So I just want to preface that because this is something new for our community and for this board. And then I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Jallo. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, so I guess I want to start my presentation with thank you and probably a question as to, we'll have some kind of future conversation about how you want to share it with the public as we're moving along, okay? So once again, good evening, everyone. Happy to be here and really happy. I'm more excited about being invited by a student to come visit their school than anything else this evening. And I'm really thankful for the invite, which I will hopefully honor very soon. And very thankful for the timeliness of it because it helps ground me and hopefully you in why we do this work, especially around budgets, because as she mentioned, or as her peer mentioned, we have a tendency to talk about financial numbers and terminology. And she helped me to remember that this is really a human issue, how we disperse our resources to make sure that children like her have a bright future. So I want to say thank you for all of that. Next slide, please. So once again, my responsibilities this evening are pretty simple. You're already aware that an academic plan and a financial plan over multiple years was one of my core responsibilities. And my other core responsibility is to make sure, to the best of my ability, that the budget that is co-created with administration and the board and with my support is one that is balanced and one that is based on reasonable assumptions and projections. So this is a slide that you saw the other night, and this is just to ground us in some of the information that you received Tuesday night, that the overall budget is a little under $1 billion this year as projected for 21-22. There's nothing new here, the same slide, we can move on. This next slide is also a slide that you're pretty familiar with. It talks about the different expenses that are projected for the 21-22 budget. And as you see, there are areas where we have significant increases and areas where we have significant decreases. As we go through the presentation, I'll try to highlight some of the areas of concern as it relates to increases in expenses, because we are still a district that is struggling with that phenomenon. We have increased in the area of instruction. And that is an important area because that aligns with the academic plan that was put forward back in November, that was an area that the district needed to fully resource to recognize outcomes for their students, that you needed staff, you needed up-to-date materials, you needed technology, you needed assessments, all related to improving the instructional component to your teaching and learning, and to make sure that that was realized by student outcomes that were successful. Transportation has gone up. Although the community development looks like a huge decrease, it's really not a significant amount of money in relation to the rest of the budget. Other areas have also gone up. most importantly, what is called other. And one of the things that's included in that column of other for $101,000, $101 million, excuse me, is of course our debt. Principal has gone up for the district. You know, your loans have gone up, but luckily because interest rates are low, your interest rates have not gone up significantly. But overall, your general fund budget, I need you to remember this number. If you remember no other number on this particular slide, is the $841,032,259. That is the amount of expenses that are projected for the 21-22 school year, and that is the most important number I'd like you to consider. According to this chart, that $841 million represents a 7.7 increase from the previous year. Now, you've probably heard this over and over again. However, you have a decline in enrollment, not an increase in enrollment. So we have to be concerned when our expenses go up 7.7%, but over the last 6 years, you've lost over 4,600 students. So it's hard to explain, but this is the current picture that you have created with the budget that was presented 48 hours ago for this district. Next. So I just wanted to highlight some of the things, and it's a little bit difficult, and I understand that the budget book is still a book that is in process. However, you know, it is a draft. It's still hard in some instances to reconcile what's in the budget book versus what's in some of these presentations. But I just wanted to highlight a few areas where I think we have to be concerned, we have to think about as we think of next year, the year after that, and the year after that. So for one, like I said, we wanted to increase funding for instruction, and you've done that. And it's unfortunate that you have to do it in the way that you have to, but you need to, right? You need assessments. You need materials that, you know, I've heard a lot about them being culturally relevant, and that's certainly the case. I would argue that it's equally, if not more important, that they are accurate and up to date. Some of your curriculum materials that you use with your students are predated even the standards that we are using now. They are that old, that out of date, and that more difficult to use in the classrooms for students who are trying to prepare for the future. Can't do that with 10, 15, 20-year-old curriculum materials. So money has to be spent on curriculum materials, training, and once again, resourcing your academic department. Your academics is the core, the heart of your district. And so you cannot underfund that particular area. And hopefully by doing that, you should hopefully see results that are in the positive for your students. Once again, like I said before, your principal and your interest is increased, and that's mostly your bands that you have been going out for some of your capital improvements. That has increased. But what I really want to bring your attention to, because many of our colleagues across the state have complained about this, and we have too, but I think it's when you see it front and center, hopefully it resonates with you. Your charter school expenditures, you're starting to get to a point of saturation in terms of the increase in the charter schools. They have increased, the expenditures have increased by 10.5%. Next year, you're projected to spend over $100 million on charter schools. Transportation costs, it looks like it's only 1.4%. But it's estimated that you will be spending close to $80 million on transportation. Luckily, we and the district are doing some things about that. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. BOCES, technically BOCES is our expenditures as it relates to special ed in BOCES. I want to commend Desiree and her team. They have scrubbed their data. They've put some practices in place. They've put together a standard operating procedure. They've looked at their IEPs. They've done really due diligence in looking at expenses, looking at their resources, and looking at maximizing resources. And that has actually resulted in a decrease in their component of BOCES but we still have an increase in other BOCES expenditures, like for transportation, for nursing, and I think to a certain level, CTE programming. So there's work to be done with BOCES, but when you unpack that data a little bit further, you see that there are specific types of BOCES expenditures that are still on the rise, although we've made great strides in reducing in other areas where we spend with BOCES. And finally, overall, when this is just a few high-level examples of where we're increasing expenses. You'll see that overall, the general fund is increasing by over $60 million. Once again, we have to ask ourselves, why are we spending over $60 million when we know we have fewer students? And there are clear ideas as to why that is happening, but it is still an increase of $60 million in expenditures or expenses for the district for the coming year. Next slide, please. So once again, you've seen this before. I don't want to get caught up in all the numbers. I want to focus in on one number. And the one number I want to focus in on is on the fourth column. It's the $71,010,112. It's in the column for CARES and stimulus. And here's the one message I really want to leave with you for to think about and why I have concerns about this budget. This is the money that represents the stimulus money, not the money that you've heard so much publicity about that our president signed last week or week before last. This is $71 million of stimulus money. And as you see, the only way we can pay for the expenses, which is $841 million, is to use $71 million of the stimulus money. So it's like, if we didn't have a pandemic, and if we didn't have money associated with the pandemic, we would not be able to balance our budget. And so luckily we do have the money, and we need the money. We need the money to close this budget deficit. Otherwise, as demonstrated on the previous slides, we would not be able to pay our bills, which total $841 million. So if you remember nothing else with all these numbers, please remember that $71 million, because you need that $71 million to help close your budget deficit. And so that's what's a little disconcerting about this particular budget for next year. Next slide, please. So once again, everybody talks about that cliff. The cliff is if you spend that stimulus money the following year, not next year, the year after next, when you still have to pay transportation, you still have to pay debt, you still have to pay salaries, you still have to buy books, that $81 or $71 million is no longer there. You have to find it from somewhere else, or you're going to have to cut that much money from your future budget. Hence the idea of a fiscal cliff. And once again, some of our big ticket items are transportation, not because we have transportation, but because we have policies and practices that drive up our transportation costs. Debt, we have debt, and then we borrow more to pay off the previous debt, and then borrow more again to pay off the previous debt. So we're building debt, and that's why one of the things that we mentioned in the financial plan is a plan to reduce debt. Reduce debt, because paying principal and interest and being at the whims of what the interest rate are, this is just something we don't want to make as a standard part of your future budgets. Charter schools, if you remember correctly in the plan, charter schools are here, and so their seats have increased for next year. I think it's 8,000, up to 8,000 seats in total. Their seats have increased, which means they have more space for more students. And I think the budget is for up to almost the maximum number of seats that the charter schools are allowed to have. This may be an issue that needs to be addressed in a variety of ways. But for now, please know that this is also contributing to the fiscal woes of the district, like many of your peers across the state. Contracted services is also on the rise, and that is another area that is contributing to the need to use the 71 million for stimulus. Also last week, seems like last week, Tuesday night when the presentation was made about the budget, there were many slides on there about staffing. And so I want to say two things about that. In addition to the fact that you're overstaffed, you saw many slides, school by school, where we have staff for empty seats. We have staff for more students than we actually have. You've seen it. I don't have to belabor that point. But what I will add to that, in addition to you having more staff than you need in comparison to the number of students you're servicing, you also have an increase in salaries, compensation, health benefits. So those things are also driving up your expenses and driving up your need to use stimulus monies to balance your budget. Next slide, please. And I think what's interesting about the need to use $71 million of the stimulus money is that well before you had a state monitor, the Office of State Controller, working with a previous CFO, had developed this graph and had predicted that in 21-22, you would have a gap of 74 million. So they were off 3 million, right? So this certainly, although these numbers are large and scary to consider, you're lucky now. You have the money, and you can use it that way if you so desire. But please understand, this is not new. This has been predicted before. This has been shared. It's just a matter of you're moving ever closer to a point where you absolutely cannot ignore it anymore. Next slide, please. So, I want to give kudos because I don't want it to be thought or conveyed that I don't recognize the hard work that the district and the board has done as it relates to the plans and the recommendations that have been included in the plans. So, you have restored academics. You have made great strides to be compliant with the different corrective action plans and the consent decrees as it relates to special ed and bilingual. Have you completed? No. Have you made an earnest start? Yes, you have. That needs to be acknowledged. The creation of a comprehensive assessment plan, that is in the budget, that is in the academic plan, that requires funding in order to do that, and you have made that a placeholder in your budget. Extended and expanded data-driven extended day learning, including summer school. There are robust plans around that as well, and monies put aside in your future budget, in your 21-22 budget, in addition to any other monies you might be afforded, to make sure that children have multiple opportunities and a wide variety of opportunities for summer planning. So those are good things, and those are things that are in the plan. Those are things that are good practices, and those are things that you have budgeted for 21-22 on the academic side. On the financial side, you have also made great strides in terms of starting the work around updating your financial management system. And I want to stop here for a minute because I want to acknowledge the hard work that everybody throughout the district has done. Even though the budget development process is not completed, but just the work that has been done using systems and that really are no longer really fully meeting your needs. And I think if anybody had any doubt about upgrading the financial management system, after going through these last couple of weeks of trying to build a budget and pull reports and do analysis and go back and look at trends to make projections about next year, has a better understanding of the limitations of the financial management system that you guys are working under now. So glad to see that work is beginning in that area, and money has been put aside for that. Special education student management system, that whole system around IEPs and being able to generate appropriate increases in your Medicaid reimbursements, and just connecting your student management system to your special ed student management system and make sure it was working well with your financial management system. Just happy that good work, good efforts, a good start is being made in that area, and money has been put aside to take care of that as well. I think Anissa Wheeler began to speak to this the other night. Good effort and good understanding has been initiated around the evaluation of MOAs and MOUs, so you can understand the fiscal impact of these agreements, and also the academic impact of some of these agreements. Good faith effort has begun there, and soon we'll see the results of that work. The impact of contracts and partners and programs. We're at the early stages, but I see board members and others, myself included, asking a lot of questions about why this company, why this program, why this partner, what are they doing, who are they doing it with, what are the outcomes, how much does it cost, is there some other way to do it? And I see that people are starting to think that way and ask those questions, and that will ultimately have an impact on this budget and future budgets as well, because as you can see, the contracts are increasing. The amount of money that you're spending on contracts is increasing. So to be a little more diligent about examining and analyzing what these contracts are providing to the district will, I think, ultimately result in you having better product, having better quality programs and partners, and having the data and the confidence to say no when it's necessary, and perhaps save money there if it's so, if it works out that way. Restoration and modification and implementation of key financial policies. I want to commend everybody on the effort and the work that has been done around the policies around purchasing, the policies around fund balance, the policies around Medicaid reimbursement, so forth and so on. These policies will have an impact on your financial status. And then finally, kind of related to transportation and a myriad of other areas as well, the fact that work has begun in earnest under Dr. Morris and her team around looking at school zones, looking at managed choice, understanding what it is, understanding and making some determination with in a collaborative way with partners, internal and external. How do these policies and these zones serve as a bridge or a barrier to the work that we're trying to do? And if so, what monies might need to be applied to make sure that these things are adjusted to the benefit of the district. Next slide, please. So I want to go back a little bit to the plan, the fiscal plan. And I just want to go through this very, very objectively in terms of what I'm seeing and how it relates to the 21-22 budget. You know, these were recommendations that were made in the plan. Increased grant acquisitions. That's an area where I have not seen evidence of work being done in that area, because that might be an area that will help us reduce our expenses by putting it towards grants or having more grants and more access to other monies not dependent on the budget. Better processes for Medicaid and other reimbursements. We absolutely have made great strides in this area. I want to thank Mike Sousa and Carlene and others and Desiree, who have done a lot of work in this area and have met with people and done work here. And the fact that your Medicaid compliance officer will be presenting to you what's going on, I think will help in this area. Compete for charter school students. You may be doing it. I don't see evidence of that. And I think that this is an area you're really going to have to look at, because as you can see, that dollar figure is increasing pretty quickly and pretty significantly and has a significant impact on your budget. Monitor enrollment data for non-resident students attending RCSD students, schools. I don't know whether or not this is happening. I have not seen evidence that it is, but that's certainly an opportunity to increase revenue if you are educating children in your district that are not from your district, whether they're in a charter school or who do not live in your district, or whether they are attending one of your district schools. Shared space for charter schools. I don't think any movement has been made with that, but I think that's an area that one has to examine as your student population decreases and the need for space decreases, but you may still have a desire to keep the buildings. Just an area to examine. This is the area of different things that I had suggested in the plan for increasing revenue, and hope that it did not get done in this short period of time, but it's looked at in earnest next year as you get closer and closer to your stimulus money starting to run out. In terms of potential strategies for decreasing expenditures, greater employee contributions to healthcare. I don't quite see evidence of that. Staff reductions. I'm not sure. There's a little discrepancy between the budget book and some other documents that I've seen to confirm exactly what the reductions are and how much they are. But one of the numbers I saw was less than 40 employees, and in a district of this size, that's like half an employee per building, reduction, if that. So I think when you start talking about a $60 million deficit, or the need to use $71 million to balance your budget, that does not sound like a impactful number. But that's still to be determined and examined. Close and consolidate schools, that was something that was also not accomplished for the 21-22 school budget, and that is something that might impact your budget moving forward. Review and renegotiate all contracts, particularly transportation. Efforts have been made around this in transportation. I believe Mike Schmidt led a team that started that work and resulted in you having another vendor, so that you don't have one vendor monopolizing this area of transportation until you as a district have time to look at all the different factors that impact your transportation costs. Until you do that, in the meantime, can you at least renegotiate your contracts, talk to your vendors, and see about if there are any economies of scale that maybe you could be afforded. Outsource selected services, not quite sure. I haven't seen great evidence that that has happened. Appeal for year-round virtual secondary school, that may be in the conversation. I am not aware of that as well. Eliminate all spaces leased by the district. That's another opportunity to reduce expenses. I don't see evidence of that in the budget. Minimize legal requirement of services to charter schools. Some of the things we have to do and some of the things we do not have to do. So, just examining the difference between those two things. Work has begun in that area as it relates to charters. We've had great conversations and technical assistance from the state in understanding what our responsibilities are and where we might be able to have some economies of scale. They have put us in contact with other districts throughout the state that do this type of work really well with their charters. And so I think we have made great strides in that area as well. Next, please. So, once again, like I said from the beginning, it was so good to hear from that student from East, because it grounds this conversation about budget back to the purpose, and the purpose are our students. We want to be fiscally sound as an organization, not because we just want to be fiscally sound. We want to be fiscally sound because that puts us in a better position to service the students that call Rochester City their home. So we need to make sure we have the proper resources in the right place so that we can change these numbers on this chart. So that we can support our students, their families, and their teachers and their administrators in doing whatever it takes to change these type of numbers, so that they can demonstrate here and everywhere that they understand how to do the most basic of educational components, which is English and mathematics. There are plenty of others, but the state is asking our students, like they ask all students, to demonstrate it by these state assessments. And so we want a budget that makes sense, that is fiscally sound today, tomorrow, and years to come, so that we can work with students from kindergarten through grade 12. Next slide. Same message. We want a balanced budget so we have the monies available to support student, parent, teacher, administrator, to change these numbers in the upward trajectory. That's why we want a balanced budget. And it's always just good to kind of ground us back in why we're doing this and why budgets are so important. Also, a budget will tell you what that organization thinks is important. So how we spend our money tells people and tells the world what we think is important. Where we put our dollars is indicative of that emphasis of importance. And finally, I think the last slide, I just want to be very clear. RCESD continues to operate with expenses surpassing revenues. We really haven't done anything significant. Now, I don't want to diminish the work that has been done. There have been reductions. It's just not enough. So, but there has been great work done, initial work done to reduce expenses, but our expenses are still higher than our revenue, hence the gap, hence the deficit. RCSD budget assumptions and projections are sound, but are based on pre-pandemic operating procedures and norms. There's an overarching belief that we're going to return to what was. And our budget needs to, unfortunately, prepare for a future that many of us probably don't know what it will be. We don't know what our children will be asked to do. We don't know what kind of economy they will be walking into, but we can't go back. We have to plan a financial future looking forward to what children will be needing. RCSD minimally adhere to the state monitor recommendations for a balanced budget. You adhere to many things in the plans, but as it relates to how to reduce expenses, you fell a little short there, and how it relates to how to increase revenue, it's still a work in progress, at least for the 21-22 school year. So luckily, you have stimulus money that you can fall back on. I would caution that that will not always be the case for you, as is the same for many districts across the state and across the country. So therefore, the budget is balanced, but it's not sustainable because it includes non-recurring pandemic funding to close the budget deficit. What will you do with that gap when that stimulus money is no longer there? Are you going to find money elsewhere? I would be surprised. Or are you going to live a little bit more within your means as to what you can afford as a district? And finally, you know, RCSD structural deficit will return once all the COVID money has ceased, and hence the common terminology around a fiscal cliff. So that actually concludes what I have to say, other than the fact that I purposely didn't talk about fund balance because that was not presented the other night. So I'm not prepared to talk about it either. So I haven't seen final numbers on there. So I'm going to leave that. And I purposely haven't talked about the Biden American Rescue Act because there's still too many unknowns. There are things that we do know, but too many unknowns for me to respond as to how that might impact your 21-22 budget, if at all. And so that's where we are at this point in time.
Thank you, Dr. Jallo. I'm going to call on Commissioner Powell. She had her hand up first, and if anybody else has questions, if you want to raise your hand, I'll call on you afterwards.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Jallo, I don't know if you want to go back into the slide deck, but after your slide about the $71 million stimulus money, the slide after that you described your not that one. Kalia, if you want to go forward 2 or 3 slides, that one right there. You outlined you recapped your financial plan, which includes expenditures for the new financial management system and special ed management system. Now, we've already been briefed on this. That's an initial outlay of something like $7 million. So isn't it fair to say that while yes, a significant portion of the budget's expenditures are not sustainable, this is a one-shot? Yes, there are ongoing costs to keep these management systems current, but it's nothing like the initial outlay. Isn't that fair to say?
Yes, that's fair to say. So this is just an example. This slide was just to say, listen, I don't want anyone on this call or public to walk away thinking that hard work hasn't taken place in the last 7 or 8 months in terms of trying to adhere to different recommendations within each plan that have some kind of direct or indirect, more so a direct relationship to the coming budget. I mean, I didn't want to do a whole review of the academic plan and the financial plan. I didn't want to go down that road. I just wanted to pick out a few things to show there's some work going on here, and some of these things, some of these recommendations that I pulled out of these two plans will have an impact one way or the other on 21-22.
Right, I totally get that. And I just wanted to point out that a full 10% of that unsustainable is non-recurring.
Yes, agreed. Yes, yes.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Okay, Dr. Jallo, I do have some points. I do just want to give you feedback. First and foremost, oh, Ricardo, I see your hand up. So Commissioner Adams, I'm going to call on you. Commissioner Adams, your hand is up. I don't know if you intended it for it to be up.
Yeah, this technology stuff. There's a point in there in the little presentation where you had said about year-round virtual, and you didn't see that. I just wanted to put on the record that I'm concerned with that, because this just doesn't just have absenteeism problem, graduation problem. They've also had suspension problems, and so I've looked at that as an alternative, restorative type way to reduce the suspension. And so I just had to put that on the record, because I didn't know that we weren't leaning at all towards that. So
thank you for mentioning that. Here's my concern. It's on here. It's something that has been agreed to, but for your 21-22 school year, this is not going to be in the budget for 21-22 as it's been presented thus far. And when you open up a new school, if you're going to make this a new official school, there are procedures and applications that must be filed with the state ed department if in fact you're opening up a new type of school or a new school period. And that has not been done yet for the 21-22 school year. Not to say it won't be done in the 22-23 or 23-24, something like that. But this one has not been established, or an application has not been submitted to my knowledge, at least based on my interaction with SED, for this type of school setting in RCSD. So we're in agreement. I think there's value, and it could benefit a lot of students in a lot of different ways, depending on their circumstances. All I'm pointing out is that this particular opportunity will not be something that will be seen next year based on your budget.
Mr. Commissioner Adams, are you all set?
And that's it. Yeah, I'm all set.
All right, thank you for uplifting that though. So I just have a few remarks. One, I just want to say I really appreciate your presentation, your analysis. Lots of things that have been brought up from year after year after year. One thing two things I really want to spotlight tonight is debt services, and like having an understanding of how that works. So I myself did not, come into the board understanding fully that when we're taking out debt, even if it's for capital, and we're being told like, oh, the interest rate is low and it's over 30 years, there's still an increase associated that this district has to pay. And so it wasn't until I went to Georgetown where they actually presented us and taught us like how to use the interest calculator to determine our debt and bonds, and how the impact of municipality capitals really have an impact on budgets over time. And what we're seeing right now is that there are some old debts that were taken out for capitals for times where most of us weren't even serving on this board, but we're seeing those increases over time that we have to pay. And like the best way to sum it up is that when we borrow money, we're really borrowing money on the backs of tomorrow's kids. And so we have to be very conscious about how we do that. and what the true cost of a project is going to be. And I don't think we do a great job on that. One, we've been told, we're reimbursed. And in my mind, it's all tax dollars. So whether it's coming from the state or from the city, it's all tax dollars that all of us are paying into. So I want to thank you for uplifting just debt services as like an area that we all should be more concerned with and also have more, pay more attention to. The other piece, so I have not gone through the budget. My entire weekend will be going through this budget. I said it already. We just got a Tuesday night. It's a busy week for me. But I certainly will use your presentation to cross compare some things and findings for myself. But understanding that we're using this stimulus to close our deficit is certainly very alarming for me. And just because I chair the finance, it does not mean I will be voting yes on a budget. So I just want to remind this community on that. I've reminded our state monitor, my goal really is to really usher through this process and bring as much transparency, but I still will not vote on something that I don't feel confident in, even if I'm leading that work, because I don't put the budget together. But it is my job to go through that budget and challenge things that are in there that don't make sense. So I am concerned that that is something that you highlighted, because I certainly believe that we should not be doing that at all. And then also just as a reminder, again, because I know that people continue to come speak to the board about the Biden dollars that, the 200 plus and 223 million that's out there, that it will come with stipulations and parameters. And we don't know what those are, so we won't see them in this year's budget process. If that money comes, it comes, but we have to budget with what we know we are potentially getting based on the state runs, and that money was never included in the state runs. We also don't know the length of time. I do believe we got some more clarity that it's going to be over a couple of years, so it won't be like a one big shot injection in this budget year. And we know that there are some parameters, but my expectation is that there are going to be many parameters to those dollars and how they're allocated and how we are going to be allowed to use them. So just as a reminder to folks on that. So that's all I have for right now. Dr. Jallo, I believe that our board clerk emailed the presentation to the entire board.
It will be.
Okay, thank you. All right, I just want to make sure we have an actual copy as we're going through the budget, that we now have this additional lens to look through as we go through the budget to do some comparisons. Thank you.
Can I just say one other piece? I think, you've heard me ask, well, what's the fiscal implications of this contract, or what's the fiscal implications of this? It's from that idea. If you're borrowing money, even if it's reimbursable or not, you still want to know, just like if you had a student loan, car loan, or whatever, they show you're going to pay this amount of money, this amount, and we need a place where we can have that discussion of what's the dollar figure, not the percentage. What's the dollar figure that, say, Carlene and her department need to put aside for this loan, that loan, this contract, so she can have that money off the side, untouched, ready to be paid, right? And so that's the danger of not really understanding when you're borrowing money, how much money you're paying back in principal and interest, whether it's a good interest rate, et cetera, right? And the same thing with these multi-year contracts in some cases, same thing with these MOUs and MOAs that extend with no ending date. How long do I have to pay this amount of money to this person, to this bank, to this city, monthly, quarterly, how many years? Because we've seen some things where you're paying for multiple things at the same time. It's really significant, and it's going in the wrong direction right now. So we need to try and, if there's understanding that needs to be brought forth for everyone, then maybe that's the first step. But I think it's something that we need to really watch and be mindful of and ask good questions about when it comes up to the board.
Commissioner LeBron, I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah. So Dr. Jallo, one of the things that get in the way of us becoming financially solvent is political pressure. So how do we balance political pressure with balancing the books? because we tend to think that the money is flowing from the state. To your point about this money that's coming from the federal government, and it's not going to be there after this year. These are not recurring streams of revenue. What would you suggest to us with regard to the political pressure of more staff? Someone came on and talked about more social workers. So how do we, and then, my colleagues tend to get, can get, just tied in to the political pressure. What would you suggest to us about balancing that political pressure? The fact that there are times when we just need to say no, but we think we may not get reelected, and people are going to vilify us. How do you balance that with trying to balance our fiscal needs?
I thank you for that question, because actually the superintendent and I had this discussion just today, that I think it's important to be very clear about having an audience with your legislators privately or in small groups, and explain to them what's your vision, what's your mission, what is your budget to support that mission and vision, and talk to them and have them have an opportunity in a more private setting first, because they're public officials, they don't want to appear like they don't know, and have this conversation with them about, this is why we spent this amount this way, these are the choices we had, this is our decision model, for making decisions, this is where we stand. We're not saying you have to agree with us, but we want you to understand and get your message out first before others have their interpretation of your message out, right? So at least if they hear the real honest debate and deliberation that went on in the district and how you made your decisions, they at least have that first. And there's a certain knowledge that they have first before they get influenced by everything. Now, will they not get influenced? They'll still get influenced, but they will have a basic understanding and some knowledge from which to work from, rather than the perception of somebody who has their agenda, good or bad. They'll hear from you first, and all the things you had to consider when you made your decisions about how to allocate resources in your district. And I think that's important. I think public discourse, whether, we used to have little dinners all over the city to talk about the budget and explain to people and get them to ask their questions and understand, and why did you do why did you make the decision? I think that there's real power in that, so that people are more informed, better informed. I think that's a good big step.
All right, thank you.
Well, if there are no other questions, I'm turning the gavel back over to you, Vice President Elliott.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. So the next item on the agenda is the board reports, and I'll start with the ESA report, the Equity and Student Achievement Report. The ESA committee met as a committee of the whole on March 9th. Topics discussed included the ninth grade student attendance strategies, special education guide to navigating the CSE process, summer learning update, ELA and reading and mathematics departments also made presentations. The administration provided a brief update on the state monitor's academic plan, items 1 through 5. Progress is being made on the reviewed items. A review of the academic plan is now a standing ESA agenda item. Betsy Hoffa provided information on strategies used to address 9th grade chronic absenteeism, including an in-depth look at schools Northeast and Northwest. Special Education Director Pittman reviewed the CSE process with a focus on parent involvement throughout the process. Dan Hurley, who's the Executive Director of Innovation, shared the summer learning plan, which includes programs for receivership schools, credit recovery for commencement students, and advanced placement boot camp, middle school bilingual program, and an extended year school for special education students. And finally, we received an ELA presentation and a math presentation, both comprehensive presentations focused on curriculum, assessments, tiered instruction, and professional learning. And the next ESA meeting will be April 13th at 5:30. That concludes my report. And so now I'll turn it over back to Commissioner LeBron for the Finance and Resource Allocation Committee report. Commissioner LeBron?
Yes, thank you. The Finance Committee convened on Tuesday, March 16th as Committee of the Whole via Zoom video conferencing. The Finance Committee's discussion included during the meeting focused on a variety of topics and several discussions, which included the 21-22 budget calendar final updates. So the latest major update to the calendar featured the addition of a deliberation session on April 20th, where the school's budget will be reviewed and detailed. April 2021 Finance Resolutions Review. In keeping with our new practice, the committee reviewed a series of resolutions with fiscal ramifications that will be part of the April resolutions packets. And the CFO Pierce led the committee through the February 2021 finance report and the charter school enrollment data. The Finance Committee recommends the approval of the district's unaudited February 2021 financial report. Can I get a motion for that?
Motion. Second.
Thank you. I think we may have lost our board clerk. Oh, she's here. Okay. Just want to make sure. Can I get all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And the next Finance Committee meeting is April 20th, 2021. That concludes my finance report.
Thank you, Commissioner. The next board report will be from the Governance Committee. Commissioner Malloy.
Thank you, Vice President Elliott. The Governance Committee met as a committee of the whole on Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. The topics that we discussed during that meeting included the board mid-year self-evaluation. Commissioners participated in a roundtable informal review of performance on the 2021 board goals and metrics adopted in October of 2020. The discussions highlighted where commissioners felt progress was being made and also where there are other areas of improvement. Our state monitor also offered us some recommendations as well. The board will conduct its formal annual self-evaluation in June using the New York State School Boards Association, or NYSBA's Super Eval tool. A board professional development presentation on Taylor Law and collective bargaining was conducted by Chief of Human Capital, Dr. Christopher Miller, as well as by our General Counsel, Stephen Carling. The board will continue with its PD series throughout the remainder of the school year, with upcoming sessions slated on students and the law and accessing and utilizing board docs in April and May, respectively. Our next governance meeting is Tuesday, April 6, 2021 at 5:30, and that concludes my board report. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. The next report is from the Audit Committee. Commissioner Clark.
Thank you, Vice President. The Audit Committee did meet as a committee of the whole on Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021. And at this meeting, we invited our internal auditor, Catherine Barrett of Freed Maxit CPA, back to the meeting because you recall at the December 8th meeting, we did not have the single audit. So Ms. Barrett reviewed the findings from the single audit committee, and she did indicate that because we were considered low risk, they reviewed the special education program and the child nutrition program. We are in the she's in the process of writing the final report, and she did indicate that we will be considered low risk again, which is good for the organization, the best position we can be in, because it only requires a review of 40% of the programs, single audit programs. And those are programs that have federal funding of in excess of $750,000. So once we receive that report, that will close out our audit for the year ended 6/30/2020. Then we invited our Auditor General to do several presentations. The first presentation that Anissa did was on the, getting my notes together. The first presentation was on the fixed assets, the fixed asset report. And that was a report that was prepared in combination with the Office of the Auditor General and our CFO and her team. And we did go through that report. I guess the report was voted on at a previous date, but we did review the fixed asset report along with the timelines for the completion of the recommendations that were put in that report. And following that, we did per our state monitor, we did engage in a verbal review of the MOUs, MOAs dating back to 2015. And we're going to finalize that report to the board also. Also wanted to report that our next financial audit will be coming up soon. So our next audit committee meeting, which will also be a committee of the whole, will be on May 27th, 2021. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner. And the last board report is from Commissioner Powell, who will present the policy committee report. Commissioner Powell?
Thank you. The policy committee report is on board docs and it will be available to the public after this meeting. The committee met as a committee of the whole on Tuesday, March 2nd. First thing we did was walk through our policy manual update process. We are currently working on block 2 of the special ed policies. They have been most recently completed in our subcommittee and are working their way through the administration, through cabinet and through CPAC. The CPAC has provided recommendations for block 1, and given that it's budget season and finance policies will be reviewed next in July and August, school policies will be reviewed from April to June. And then an updated calendar will be posted on the website. The next thing is that our general counsel, who is also liaison to the committee, presented a NYSBA policy for gender neutral single occupancy bathrooms, which is required by law. We had voted it out of committee, and we began the 3-stage process for that's dictated by policy 2410. I'm deviating from the script, by the way. The problem is our last special meeting, it was on the agenda for discussion, but we failed to discuss it. So when we get to that resolution number 740 in our packet, I'm going to ask that we waive policy 2410. The reason we need to waive it is that we have a hard deadline for completing the implementation or the adoption of a policy by law. There's a hard deadline on that. Going back to my script, General Counsel Mr. Carling discussed our grants awards policy number 6256. This policy was amended to include a yearly presentation in October to the full board during the Finance Committee of the whole. This was a recommendation essentially that came from a board member when we discussed some of the finance policies. Mr. Carling provided a brief update of the Code of Conduct revisions. Code of Conduct will take up our entire next policy committee of the whole. And finally, I walked through a proposed consolidation of policies 2410, 2450, and 2460, all of which govern how we adopt policies. we will be discussing this also in our April 6th committee meeting of the whole. And that is our next committee meeting, April 6th at 5:30 p.m. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So we turn it over now to Superintendent Myers Small for her report.
Thank you. Good
Madam
evening.
Superintendent.
Thank you. Good evening, Vice President Elliott, and to our commissioners, our staff, and those who are viewing the meeting tonight on both YouTube as well as Facebook. I'd like to start by just reiterating what was shared earlier. Those who did not have the opportunity to see the Women's History Month program missed a treat. And if you have an opportunity, go back and watch that online. I'd certainly like to thank the committee of Francine Scott, Rhonda Kirkland, and Mercedes. I'd like to thank Commissioner LeBron, who did a beautiful job as the mistress of ceremony. The keynote speaker and those who provided the welcome were wonderful. But what was most uplifting, and I agree with Dr. Jallo, when you hear the young people speak and talk about their hopes and their dreams, it's just very inspiring and certainly empowering. Additionally, it just reminds me of the late Whitney Houston song where she talks about our children are our future. And my slight modification to that is they're our present. And all of these young ladies who were honored certainly give me much comfort that our present is in great hands. With that, let me move on to the beginning of my report. I'd like to start certainly by acknowledging the fact that we did lose a member of the Rochester City School District community. He was taken to us way too early from us over the weekend. He attended school number 9, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. School, and he did die tragically over the weekend. I want to express my condolences to his family and to the entire school number 9 family. Vice President Elliott and I spent time over at the school meeting with the principal and talking with the staff to personally share our condolences. Given just all of the sadness, we did have to deploy our crisis team first thing Monday morning. And so we have a very strong trauma, illness, and grief team, and we nickname it TIG. They provided supports both on Monday and Tuesday. And so they provide counseling, diffusing sessions, and they just assist with the coordination of resources, making phone calls, relieving staff in their classrooms or other areas to just provide that support. Some members of our student support services team also attended a meeting on Sunday to ensure that we were prepared. So again, on behalf of the Board of Education and myself and my staff, we offer our most sincerest condolences to the family, as well as the entire school number 9 family. Shifting gears, we are quickly moving to graduation. And so the month of June is very busy. One of the things that certainly has been concerning to me, however, is the performance of students, particularly at high school. And I really had very direct and targeted conversations relative to our cohort, 2017 cohort, or the class of 2021. And so I participated in one-on-one meetings with the chief of schools, with our high school principals, in order to ensure that we're doing all that we can to make sure that our seniors cross the stage for graduation in June or August. We discussed first and second marking period grades, and I was able to obtain both quantitative and qualitative data relative to each one of our high school seniors' progress. So let's just look at graduation. We know that we've set a graduation target of 71%, which is outlined in our strategic plan. And so we know that our graduation rate was 68.2% for the 2016 cohort. And if we just look at the data of those students who are currently on track to graduate with 16 plus credits, that right now 67.1% of our seniors would graduate. And so certainly we know that we have a gap, and again, 71% is certainly the floor and not the ceiling, but we continue to move forward and work. So let's look at what that breakdown is. There's about 1,800 students in the 2017 cohort. And if you look at that breakdown, we apply a traffic light system, green, yellow, and red. And we identify it pretty much. If you're green, if you have 16 or more credits, you're in the yellow zone. If you have between 11 and 15 and a half credits, and then if you have between 0 and 10 and a half credits, then you're in the red zone. So we really have been placing our focus, our time and attention certainly on that yellow zone to ensure that we are getting those students the resources and the supports that they need. Let's talk a little bit about what are the contributing factors to our students not being successful in school. And so this really takes that principle of applying, really it takes the whole village to support our students. And this is anecdotally what has been reported to me in those meetings, that certainly depression and social emotional issues. We know that COVID has had a significant traumatic impact on our scholars. Many of our scholars are working to support the fiscal situation at home, and so that is impacting school. So we do have students who are taking advantage of certainly online credit recovery, and I'll talk about that a little more in depth later, as well as night school or logging in later at night during the day. Some of our scholars are taking care of family members, either their own children or younger siblings or elder parents or even grandparents. Another contributing factor certainly is the lack of peer connections. We know how difficult it's been as adults that we don't have those social connections like we used to and can't hang with those in person whom we're friends with. And so this is really critical for our young people, and they are struggling. There's also just a little bit of a fear of the unknown. This is what I've known my whole experience, kindergarten through 12th grade, and now I'm going to have to go out into the world and start adulting. And so as a former high school counselor, I know some of my scholars just were afraid to graduate because they're leaving something that's very comfortable to a different world that is unknown. Also, just a lack of senior rituals, proms and the graduation ceremonies that they're accustomed to, yearbook and extracurricular activities. So that has been difficult. And then some of our scholars have just said, you know what, I just give up. And so we really have been trying to hone in on this group in particular to try and give them that push and uplift them, to give them support. So what are the top, and before you go to the next slide, I'm just going to tell you we have 3 courses that are problematic, and that it was surprising to me, certainly one of them, until we leaned in. So if you'll go to that next slide, the top 3 courses that our seniors are not doing well are English 4, so that's that senior year of English, the economics PIG, which stands for participation in government, so it's a combo. They're struggling in that. And they're also struggling through physical education. And there's very high failure rate for that across the district. And so as I spoke with principals, there are systems and structures in place to address that. But you find that just common data line across all schools, these were the top 3. And in some instances, phys ed was the course that had the most failures. So what are we doing to talk with the 2017 cohort? We're certainly making phone calls, and we're reaching out to students, and we're reaching out to families. And let me just share with the board commissioners, I asked the principals a series of questions to gather this information. So I wanted to know, what is your tracking system? How are you monitoring? What systems and structures are in place? How are you communicating with both students and their families to make sure you're connecting and communicating what the concerns are. So if you go to the next slide, we are making phone calls. We're holding parent-teacher conferences, both on Zoom or Teams, as well as in person. We are doing home visits and reaching out, because we do have some students that we just lose touch and they're not responding, or the families are not responding. We do refer to community resources who are helping us make connections with our scholars and their families. We do a lot on Zoom with conferencing and tutoring for support. And we also utilize both email as well as text messaging to get in touch. And so this really is a matter of whatever works for us to make those connections with our students and our families. The principals were sharing that their assistant principals and their respective staff are just doing really whatever it takes to make those connections to connect with home. So what are some of the specific interventions and supports that we are using because students are not doing well and they are not being successful in their classes? We certainly have teams, and they're different from school to school. So it might involve the principal and his assistant and his or her assistant principal. Counselors are usually involved, instructional coaches, and others, but there's team meetings to review the data, and we have a tracking system so we can monitor student progress. Certainly, we have significant social emotional supports that we put in place. In all of the meetings, the school counselors participated, and they talked about the school counselor Google Classrooms that they use to make sure that they're connecting with students and they load pertinent information relative to graduation. As you heard earlier, the learning pods are working for some of our seniors, and it allows them to have that catch-up time either in person or online. We are working with outside agencies. We have individualized intervention plans for each, in some instances, for each of our seniors to say, these are the particular courses that you still need to earn towards graduation, and here's the specific plan for success to get you there. In some instances, students are participating in night school. They're participating in Zoom seminars and marking period recovery, which allows students to not have an extended period of time to go by, and they can recoup the information within that 10-week time frame. So some next steps and some aha moments that we discovered as we were meeting. We need to have a uniform tracking system. So everyone is using an Excel spreadsheet, but there are just some slight permutations of what each principal is doing. So we want to make that uniform. We want to make sure that our documentation is crystal clear. So not just saying on March 25th at 8:12 p.m. I talked to Mrs. Myers about Leslie being behind, like really documenting and articulating what those interventions are so we can look back to see if there's evidence of impact with that particular intervention. And so we want to make sure also that we begin to develop a cadre of best practices so we don't have to constantly recreate the wheel, and that we can have principals share with one another what is working and what maybe doesn't have as much impact. And I have to tell you, it was such a pleasure meeting with all of the principals and their respective teams. And that's something I was sharing with Vice President Elliott, that I really enjoyed having those meetings and those conversations with the chiefs. And it's important for me to be very visible about that work and be very intentional. And so the other next step that's not listed here, but I think it's important for the commissioners to know, is the principals are expected to give me an update every week about listing, the students who they're most concerned about. How is it going? What type of online credit recovery is occurring? And what does it look like? And so that will be happening between now and the end of the school year, so we understand what is happening with our seniors. So certainly, my plea to certainly our community and to families and caregivers, please, let's just wrap our arms around our seniors. Let them know that we care and that we support them, and we want to help them get across the finish line to graduation. Just a few other quick updates. School choice, it's time for some of our scholars to choose a new school for the 21-22 school year, and the deadline to apply for school choice lottery is just a few short weeks away on Friday, April 2nd. I just want to address the parent who spoke earlier and the work that's being led by Dr. Morris, that anything that would change would be for the 22-23 school year and beyond. So that does not have an impact for the 21-22 school year. So unfortunately, due to COVID, we're not able to host community events that bring in a number of applications that we typically receive. So we're working with school counselors and pre-K agencies to let everyone in the community know about the great things that are happening in our schools. So April 2nd is right around the corner, and time is running out for families who haven't applied for that school choice option. So this also includes our scholars currently in grades 6 and 8, as well as future kindergarten students to the Rochester City School District. Elementary and secondary profiles on our website are a great place to start learning about the amazing things that and offerings that we have in the Rochester City School District. So please, if you need any assistance, reach out to the Office of Student Equity and Placement. You can come in person between the hours of 8 and 4:30 at 131 West Broad, or families can call our placement office at 262-8241 with any questions. Let's just shift a little bit and talk about vaccinations. I would be remiss if I did not thank Erin Grotman and her team for working with Walgreens to secure over 900 doses of the Johnson & Johnson one-dose vaccine. We had 2 vaccination clinics earlier this month, one on Wednesday, March 10th at East High, and then another on March 13th at the Jefferson campus. And I have to tell you, this was so incredibly well received by staff as we filled all 500 appointments for the vaccines on Wednesday at East and close to 300 at the Jefferson campus on Saturday, the 13th. And so we continue to work to secure additional vaccinations should individuals need it. And I want to thank Erin again and Walgreens for their efforts to get as many employees who wanted to be vaccinated. I also would be remiss if I didn't thank the Rochester Teachers Association. They were instrumental in securing 1,100 Pfizer shots. And as you've heard spoken during public comment, and you've been individually or collectively communicated with, our staff have indicated that getting the COVID-19 vaccination was a top priority. And I truly believe that we're at a point now, commissioners, that all those who desire to be vaccinated have received one or have an upcoming appointment to do so. So I believe we're in really good shape. Let's address return to in-person learning, because that has been a significant question. So as many of you have heard, the CDC, or Centers for Disease Control, has reduced the 6-foot social distancing limits in elementary schools, or the elementary level, to 3 feet. So this certainly is exciting news, and it means our COVID levels are reducing and that we're working together to really, really stay safe. And as a result, some districts in Monroe County are considering increasing. And I know that there's a lot of mixed information out there I've been sitting in, but no district has really, to my knowledge, finalized that with the 3-foot reduction. I know that I believe Spencerport and I believe Wheatland, they're able to follow still the 6-foot guideline, but superintendents are really in that decision-making process right now, literally as we speak. And so for the Rochester City School District, we would really, really want and desire to have students come back to increased days. We have really worked and determined that it's best to remain in the current hybrid model. And I know the chief of schools have actually worked very hard to bring many students, I think over 2,000 off the waiting list. So I will circle back with them just to see where we are with that, because I did hear the parent, Mary, mention that. So I will circle back with them. But we have already started planning for next year. And we really want our plan to be very well thought out and to be vetted and transparent. So under the leadership of Deputy Superintendent Martinez Davis and Chief Michael Schmidt, our first work group actually met on Monday, March 22nd, to start working on 21-22 reopening. This group consisted of teachers, principals, and central office staff. Today, Deputy Superintendent Martinez Davis met with elementary and secondary principals to review the draft plan for their review, input, and feedback. And we are formalizing various focus groups in order to share the draft plan for input and feedback. And so we are working with the following focus groups to convene in April: ASAR, RTA, Bente, RAP, students, and parents. And we hope to have a draft plan to share with the Board of Education in April and to be very transparent with our community. We also are going to work to create contingency plans in accordance with any new changes or developments with the CDC guidelines. Please understand that this is no small task, and we understand the importance of getting it right and making sure that we do hear all voices. As you know, new information does come from the CDC, the State Education Department, and the Governor's Office, and that information can change, causing us to shift course. So I want to just in advance thank everyone for their continued flexibility and understanding, and we will work to keep you updated on our plans as we move forward. So Vice President Elliott, what I would ask is if we could just have just a little bit of time during the next few weeks to really keep just brief updates about where we are with reopening. Pardon?
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
The next area is really about communications, because you cannot nearly communicate enough in a school community. And so that's probably the number one piece of feedback that I get. You need to communicate more, Superintendent Myers. And so I work hard to be transparent and open. I do my Friday messages, videos, and I try to send emails out. I've heard repeatedly that robocalls are not the best way. So I would be interested in hearing from our parents and caregivers what are additional ways that we can communicate information and that the word is getting out, particularly to our families. But as we continue to move forward, and I continue to appreciate the feedback and work to improve my communication, I certainly, first and foremost, want to stay connected with students. And so I do have participation and commitment with the Student Leadership Congress. And when I get into schools, I'm talking with students, and I'd like to continue to increase those opportunities. I'm going to be scheduling some town hall meetings and interactions with parents and caregivers. I'm reestablishing the Principals Advisory Council. And so I'll be meeting with about nine principals once a month to discuss non-contractual issues and to problem solve together. I've been meeting with principals also on specific topics in groups of 2, 3, or 4. We've talked about graduation, returning to in-person learning, and we've just frankly been able to get to know each other a little bit better on a personal level. I'll be launching soon open office hours where anyone in the district can have a conversation with me for about 5 to 7 minutes, and we can connect that way. I will be starting a teacher advisory panel so I can get some feedback directly about simultaneous learning and returning to in-person learning. And I just want to remind everyone that we do have a dedicated email that is superintendent'soffice@rcsdk12.org, where you can send information, and you can either direct that to me or you can pose a question, and we can also make sure that if I can't answer it, that it would be directed to the most appropriate person. So again, continuing to increase communication. And just finally, just in celebration of Women's History Month, I did tweet this and she was mentioned, but Maia Shaka, a 2000 graduate of Edison Tech, we are so proud. She has received the opportunity of a lifetime to work in the NFL. She was on the Today Show earlier this month to talk about being the first Black woman to join the ranks of officials in the NFL. She began training with the NFL in 2014 and was chosen for a program when scouts observed her officiating games at the collegiate level. This story is so heartwarming to me because when Maia is not officiating football games, she has been teaching health and physical education at a school in Virginia Beach, Virginia. So congratulations to Maia and her accomplishment and your accomplishments. And just finally, Dr. Alice Holloway Young, who I mentioned during Black History Month, honored. She's a former RCSD teacher and administrator. And I'd like to thank Senator Samra Brook for recognizing one of our own former employees. It was befitting that during Women's History Month, Dr. Young received the Liberty Medal, which is the highest honor given to a civilian by the New York State Senate. She is recognized for her lifetime contributions to education. So I again want to thank Senator Brook and congratulations, Dr. Alice Holloway Young, who is a shero to me for this well-deserved honor. With that, Vice President Elliott, it concludes my report to the Board of Education.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. I'd also like to just recognize the new mayor of Boston, who has some RCSD ties, Kim Janey, who's the daughter of former Superintendent Clifford Janey. So I want also to recognize her as well. And I do see we have a question from Commissioner Powell.
Yes, thank you. This question was prompted by your slide on school choice and your response to the parent commentaries, Madam Superintendent. The thing about school choice, the sign-up deadline, particularly kindergarten, is it really relies on the entire community understanding the process, right? The culture of signing up, not at the end of August, just before school starts, but in April. And it occurs to me that, I mean, we have a lot of community partners, the city, any number of community partners that have regular engagement with our families, and they don't need to know the details about school choice to partner with us to get the word out. Because I think it wasn't this meeting, but a previous meeting, a parent said that the families that miss that deadline and don't sign up before the deadline are at a serious disadvantage, right? So this is one area where if we could do a better job of engaging the whole community and getting them to partner with us to get the word out, we can erase that inequity, and we can get all of our parents on the same footing, simply by trying to rope our community partners into that work with us. It doesn't have to be an expensive advertising campaign like we did when we launched school choice. The other thing I wanted to suggest is, again, for kindergarten enrollment, is it possible for the principals of schools to get address information, contact information about the children who are in pre-K? We know who they are, whether they're in our pre-K or in an agency pre-K, and invite the principals to do their own outreach. You know, we talk so much about how transportation costs when families choose schools outside their neighborhood. We've talked about how the charter schools are so very expensive, not just for tuition, but also for transportation. If our principals, our elementary principals, really worked to recruit children in their own neighborhoods, recruit in the same way that charter schools recruit to take the kids away from us, we could have a big impact, you know, on future budgets along the lines of what Dr. Jallo was talking about in her presentation. Just a thought.
Okay, thank you. Uh-oh.
Yep, I'm back.
I was like, did we lose you?
Yeah, Dr. Nelms, I know that you didn't submit a report, but what I was interested in, you all are doing good work over there in terms of hosting.
Vice President,
Talia?
I texted you that he did have his report, and you
Okay. Sorry, but the reason that I was so interested, Dr. Nelms, in you reporting, because there's such great work that the East High School community is doing around COVID vaccinations and opening up the school to the community. And so you've just been East has been a great neighbor, not only to the Beechwood community, but to the city of Rochester and probably even to the county. And I wanted that to be stated, you know, to you present on that publicly. And also just, you know, from an academic perspective, you know, what are you projecting in terms of graduation rates? And if you can't do that right now, I'll certainly understand that. But I just wanted, you know, the community to know about the great work that East is doing over there in terms of this pandemic. So thank you for, you know, honoring, you know, being able to do that for me, and, you know, to give you some kudos over there as well. So Dr. Nelms?
Thanks. So you sound like Van asking about graduation rates, you know.
That's what it's about.
That's right. So I will use a line from Malik Evans. I will be brief, brother, be brief. The 5 B's. So I'm going to go through a few of these slides here. So first of all, I would be remiss if I did not say that the ceremony prior to the board meeting was absolutely phenomenal. Again, the students, the guest speaker, and all of those who acknowledged, you know, past and present, and then also for our future, as Dr. Meyer said earlier. It was wonderful to hear all the many young ladies who were on, and I can't wait to see what they do years from now. You know, I was talking to Ajamo Kintwana at ESL today, and they're doing some work in celebrating kids who graduated. And I said, you know, we should look back with them 5 years from now and see what they're doing, and just track these kids and to support them and honor them, because these are the trendsetters of our future. Next slide. Next slide, here we go. Just an update on our school reopening. Just really proud of the staff. I continue to honor them. They are doing tremendous work with students, not just on Thursdays and Fridays, but Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays as well, and even on Saturdays, as some parents are experiencing, getting extra tutoring help and support, you know, because of the access to technology. About 41% of our students at East, grades 6 through 12, are attending in the hybrid model. What we're seeing is an increased interest in students coming back. We get about 5 to 10 requests per week asking for students can they come back? And we're trying to accommodate that. If, and I'm going to say if and when, I'm going to be hopeful for that. If the guidelines change from 6 to 3 feet, we have a plan prepared to get as many kids back under the 3 feet rule as well. Once it's allowed, as Dr. Meyer said, superintendents are actively making plans for return this year, some going 4 days, some going 5 days, but it will depend on the 3 feet rule. So if the 3 feet rule comes back into play and schools across the county are moving forward, we're gonna look at getting more kids back, as many kids as we can within that 3 feet parameter. We know that the COVID cases have been minimal. We track those, there's only been 2, and there hasn't been any transmission rates between students. And we also know that we continue, to your point, Commissioner Elliott, to provide vaccinations and also screening and testing. And that's in collaboration with the RCSD, with the mayor's office, with the county, and of course, University of Rochester. I mean, one of the benefits of having this school and university partnership is I'm able to talk to the president directly and say, this is a need of ours, this is a need of the community. Or if I'm at the Connected Communities board where I sit as the chair, I can say to them, we need to pressure people to come in, you know, or rock the future, et cetera. So I think what we're seeing is that the educators are sitting at the intersection of these policies and these practices, and we're able to better inform both healthcare systems and the county around the true needs of our community. So this is what COVID has provided, is an opportunity for our community's voice to be at the table and influencing decisions that are happening that would have been happening without them. So I guess there's a benefit to us honoring the community's wishes. Next slide. I also want to continue to support and publicly acknowledge our community partners. They have been incredible. This is only a few, but we have students in on Monday through Wednesday with some of our community support partners. Sometimes teachers are in, administrators are taking kids, because there are some kids who really are falling behind by only going to school 2 days in person, even though the teacher's available to them Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. But there are just kids who need to have that constant reminder of how to manage their time, how to set priorities. And so we continue to do that. And again, we have many partners who are volunteering, but we shifted their work responsibilities at the beginning of COVID, so they would be more available for kids when school was not in session. And that was a strategic move, and it's one that's paying its benefits. Our principals, very similar to what's happening throughout the rest of the district. We have, as you all know, East is really data focused. We always have been. We know each kid, what they need, which class, and then we start to, we call it adopt a senior and a freshman. Who are the 5 kids I'm going to go after and be the point person for their parents and their teachers to make sure their teachers know if they're having technology issues or if they need to get additional work handed in or extension. And so that's been an incredible effort led by both Marlene Blacker and Tanya Wilson. And that data tracking continues and continues support. We also use some funding to purchase bus passes for those students to get to and from school on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, but also on some Saturdays. And we continue to push that and make that available for all of our students. But if the 3 feet rule goes into effect, we're going to get as many kids in as we can, and we have plans for that so that every kid who wants to be in person can be safely. Next slide. This is just, I shared this slide before, and a board member mentioned it recently in a different conversation. You know, this community schools model, we talk about neighborhood schools and community schools. And the way I explain that is a neighborhood school is defined by geography or location. So you have this, this imaginary 3 mile radius around the school. And then you have opportunities to bring community assets to the building. So things like testing and vaccination, things like food bank and our partnership with Food Link. We're delivering food to kids every single week. You bring in job opportunities. I'll talk a little bit about a job fair and preparing kids that's going to occur next week, and tutors and partners. And as we reimagine schools, Dr. Jallo mentioned earlier around preparing for the next iteration of school, what schools will look like in September, we really have to focus and continue to understand why community schools are so important within a neighborhood school context. And Willow was right. You know, we have to get recruitment in. We do that with Connected Communities. That's why we partner with them. That's why the MOU with 33 was created some years ago, is to encourage people to stay within their neighborhoods, but then get the community, like the universities and the hospitals, and mental health support and food for those who have food insecurity, to come to the school so parents don't have to travel across town to get, a bag of bread or get support with filling out a job application or getting legal support from some of those like in Buffalo. They actually have attorneys come to schools and provide legal aid to parents and families. And so we can do those things if we combine our neighborhood and community school priorities. And that's what we're trying to build at East. We've been trying to do that since we arrived. As you all know, when we first entered this partnership, less than 5% of our kids attended East who live near East. And we're up to about 50% right now. So we know that recruitment in the neighborhoods work. We know that having community school supports work. And we know that kids and families want to go to school that's close to them when it's safe and when they see the school as being successful. So if we're going to do our best to counter the charter school movement and kids leaving, we have to improve our schools. We have to advertise that. And we can't sit and fight amongst ourselves about the quality of schools as kids exit our system. We have to understand what's working in our system, double down on those things, and expand those partnerships so that those families who are choosing charters know that we have a strategic plan and an alignment pre-K through 12 for all of our students. Next slide. This is just an article that came out this week in EdWeek. EdWeek is one of the biggest, it is, I think, the biggest education publications around policy in the country. And they did a story on East in the context of how COVID-19 will make fixing America's schools, America's worst performing schools, even harder. And we talked about the critical point of strategy and funding. And when we think about, again, back to my earlier point, when you think about strategic alignment and you think about systemic change, you know, it has to be structured in a way that's coordinated and planned for. Very similar to what I shared at the last finance meeting earlier this week. It's one thing to place like special ed classes in a building, but to what extent have you measured and planned for the expenditures associated with that? And I kind of shared that with the board last week. So we have to think about all of our programs. Programs in year one might be more expensive than year 5. We should know that as we're planning it out. Some programs might be more expensive in year 5 as you grow those things out. But we should know those things before we sign any MOUs or before we make any agreements. And this article provided some insight and guidance around that intersection between strategy and structure and school resource and finances, and also return investment when you have more kids graduating than we've had in the past. So I would encourage people to take a look at the EdWeek article, and I'll make sure that Lorna and I send a link to the board. Next slide. This is the job fair the youth job fair that I mentioned. This is going to take place this Monday and Tuesday. We had one also over February break. This is for all kids. This is a partnership with the City of Rochester, the communities again that we work with at East, Rochester Works, AmeriCorps, our MAPI, Rochester Monroe Anti-Poverty Initiative, and in the East EPO. But it's open to everyone, and I have to give credit to Lorna Washington, who I know is on this call, and also Jason Taylor, who leads our community coordinated efforts. And so both of them have been working with a number of partners, again, community school mentality, to get kids ready for work. So you're looking at financial literacy, we talked about in the past, resume and cover letters, things like, you know, what's the difference between an email and a text? Because some kids like to write in text language and everything they do. And so having them to be able to shift and be prepared for work and getting them then the opportunity. So kids who participate in this also get, you know, they get a chance to see what's open in the community. They have an opportunity to apply for it and also for paid internships. So we encourage all students to sign up. It's on the East website. It was a really good turnout. There's really good turnout in February. And I anticipate there'll be great turnout this Monday and Tuesday. You'll also see the ages as 14 to 20, because we acknowledge that some of our recent graduates still need the support. And so this also applies to kids who graduated within the last 2 or 3 years, depending on their age. So I encourage you to share this with a friend, repost it, but it's a great opportunity for individuals to get ready for work. One more slide. And as we know, Des is on today. Des has been on the board meetings quite a bit the last few months, and I'm always excited to hear what she says, and sometimes nervous too, because I have no idea what she's going to talk about. But she is a true advocate for herself and the students at East, and so is Diana. These 2 students received full scholarships to the U of R, and they got in first on their merit, and then there was funding that came with it that they found out about last week. So they were quite surprised when they got their scholarship award letter. In fact, Des was in my office. She came in and said, I think something's wrong with my financial aid form. Can we look at it, Dr. Nelms? I said, sure. We sat down. I had already known that she was gonna get her scholarship, but it got placed in her financial aid package before she was told. And she said, this says 0 on it for next year. What does that mean? And I said, it means you owe nothing. You earned it through your hard work for the last 13 years of your education. So we called her mother, and her mother was crying and shared a bunch of tears of joy about Des's hard work and her work ethic and her advocacy. She was really more proud about that than she was about the money, but the money did not hurt. And this scholarship is $80,000 a year for all 4 years. And so if you look at each scholarship, it's about $320,000 each. And I want to thank Danny Wegman and President Mangelsdorf and the entire crew who put this all together for our students. And this is going to be we hope, a yearly contribution for a new set of kids every single year. It is one of those in-kind benefits of partnering with the University of Rochester. And we're gonna look we should be doing this in all schools over time and finding individuals who are worthy of these of these scholarships. So I thank them. There's also other scholarships that are on the horizon as well. The Rich Handler Scholarship, who's the president of the Board of Trustees, and others are now stepping up and asking how can they support students when they transition from high school into college. So job well done. They earned the right to be there. As a parent who is trying to figure out how I'm going to pay for my daughter's next 4 years, this scholarship means more than I think we all realize. And the next slide should be it. That's it. Thank you, Commissioner Elliott and board, and thank you, community, for listening in. And again, congratulations to all the young ladies honored today, all the women within our school district, and especially these two U of R rising freshmen. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad you reported. Great news. Thank you, Dr. Nelms. Have a couple of hands up. Commissioner LeBron, you have a question for Dr. Nelms?
No, not a question. I just wanted to, I had my hand up before he started presenting, and then I don't think you saw it. So I was like, I'll just make my comments afterwards. But I personally want to thank Stacy Darby from RCSD, and also all of the staff that have been working, volunteering, and even their spouses at the vaccination sites, both the Saturday and the Wednesday one. And so I got to meet lots of spouses for staff people who were just there to simply support and volunteer, and that was amazing. And then Stacy was instrumental, and really, if it was not for her, then I was not able to like partner with Walgreens, who has been an incredible partner for this district. But it was really Stacy who made that connection and allowed us to do a third pop-up. Not detailed and planned, we just ran with it because we had access. And so I know that folks were, either tweeting or thanking me on social media, but I definitely feel like all the credit goes to Stacy Darby and Matt at Walgreens. And I was just like the middle person that helped find the folks, particularly Black and Brown individuals who met the criteria to have easier access to vaccination. And then also I want to thank the staff at East, because they were told on short notice that it was happening, because it was planned on short notice, and stepped right up from the sentries to the secretaries to make it a very welcoming environment for all the folks in the community who signed up. So I just want to give a shout out to Stacy and uplift her. And that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Powell, you have questions? Oh, that's an old hand?
No, it's an old hand. I'm sorry.
All right. Thank you.
Can I just make one correction? The job fair is all week, not just Monday and Tuesday. It's all week for, you have to sign up, Lawrence, you have to sign up so they can get the right numbers into the virtual room. So as we push that out to the community, the job fair is all next week over spring break. And she also said that the neighborhood rate for kids went from about 5% to about 40. I think I mistakenly said 50. So I wanted to make sure I corrected that data point before I got off. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. I need a job. I need to come over there to the job fair.
Right.
But thank you very much. I think I'm a little too old, so.
We don't discriminate, no.
Thank you. I'm going to need a motion.
I'm sorry, Dr. Nelms, is that job fair open to students, not just East High students, but?
Yeah. For everyone, ages 14 to 20 all week.
Thank you.
Okay, Kalia has been, she's trying to reconnect. I'll give her a minute, I'll give her a couple of seconds. We may have to ask for a motion to have Marisol to be the clerk until Kalia is able to get back on. Can I get that motion?
I'll motion that.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. So the next order of business is consideration of resolutions. What I'm going to do is to take them in blocks unless someone has some objection to that. So I'll start with the teaching and learning resolutions, 694 through 698. Can I get a motion for those resolutions?
Motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Are there any questions to those resolutions?
Yes.
Commissioner LeBron?
I just have a couple of questions on, so the way that these motions were done, they have, I don't even know, it's multiple letters to them. So let me just start there. So it's 694 A, B, C, D, E, F, and then it goes on through the remainder of those motions. I just had a question, and I'll start with 694C for the dates. So some of the dates in Part A and B extend into June, and then some of them look like they're just for 1 week only, and they're different phases. I just needed some clarification around that. And then as in 695, A and B mentioned Regents exams and preparation for Regents. And I thought that it was my understanding that the state is still requiring testing, but that the Regents weren't going to do Regents exams, but I just need clarification on that.
So the first one, Sheila, if you would respond to.
For Commissioner LeBron, could you just clarify the question that you have for 694B?
You're muted, Commissioner LeBron. You're muted.
I sure am, and I was talking. Okay, C. It's C. So A and B has some dates that extend into June, right? But then C had the dates 3/29 to 4/1. So I'm assuming that you're asking for additional pay to have school during spring recess for a certain number of students. It was a little confusing to read because all of the A, B, C's, and D's, and E's, and F's have a specific number for different schools. So I was trying to follow along, but I was just wondering why some of them only are for spring break, but then others start from spring break and extend into June, like June 17th.
Yes, so the C is particularly for spring recess. It is Spring Recess Academy, and they're going to hold it Monday through Thursday from 8 to 12 and target the groups of students that will be participating in that recess, right? And the other ones have different sessions. So A runs on Saturdays, and B runs on Mondays and Tuesdays, 1 hour after school each day. They are all under the Smart Scholars cohorts 1, 2, 3, and 4. So they're separated by cohorts, and that is part of why they are differentiated in that way. The Regents component was noted on the information that was presented to the board before we were completely sure that Regents would not be counted towards the graduation. So our hope is that the Regents prep will still support the students in getting the highest quality of tutoring so that they can achieve if they take the Regents and also use that same set of standards and supports for achieving the highest level grade they can in the course.
Okay, I guess I'm just a little confused around that piece if we're doing, because it specifically said Regent preparation. And I think I would prefer that it said more detailed what was actually going to happen or occur academically, whether it's tutoring support so that they can achieve a higher academic versus, so yeah, that whole, I'm gonna have lots of follow-up on just all of those resolutions. I think for me, they felt too muddled and hard to follow along, and very confusing. So
Let me ask you, let me just ask Commissioner LeBron, do we need to have the district to rewrite that language so it's clear? And while I'm asking that, perhaps we need to table these resolutions until we get those resolutions more clear for the board?
The problem, Vice President Elliott, is that today's date is the 25th, and this would be to start from Monday because spring recess starts Monday. And so I'm assuming everybody has to pass today so that everybody can start preparing tomorrow for Monday to be a go.
So do we need to amend it tonight then? Or are you okay with, even though the language may be somewhat muddled, are you okay with supporting it?
I'm okay with supporting it tonight and then having just some additional follow-up conversations around how to present those type of resolutions. I just personally think that they are confusing and yeah.
Okay.
Well, Dr. Jallo has her hand up though, so I'm gonna shush.
Yeah, Dr. Jallo?
I was going to also say that if we could also have outcomes, they can report back the outcomes of each of the programs that they're presenting today. So one can see what the proposed outcomes were, what was the data collected, and whether or not it was successful. So that, you know, if you want to let it go through and the language is somewhat confusing or not as transparent as needed, then let administration show you how it worked and prove to you that it was a worthwhile investment of funds with specific outcomes for students. But I do think in the future, they should be written a little bit different. And the fact that administration brings it to you 48 hours before the programs are supposed to start is not your problem, right? If it's, that's really on administration to get it to you in time for you to think, deliberate, ask questions, and then decide whether or not it should go further. So I'm just saying, you know, just for future, I think that that's something that the board should consider.
So to Dr. Jallo's point about getting the outcomes, let me just offer, and let me just direct this to the superintendent, that maybe one place to do that is ESA, or maybe because it's the HR, you know, staffing, maybe to the HR committee. However, that committee doesn't meet, you know, as regularly. So at some point, we need to look at, and I think probably the most, maybe finance, Commissioner LeBron, that we talk about the outcomes even at finance. Would you be willing for that, Commissioner LeBron?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I think
All
we
right.
can partner too on it, Vice President Elliott, and I know we're partnering on the state monitors reports and monitoring that through both of our committees. So maybe adding some components to both of these pieces.
Okay. Any other questions?
I'm sorry, was 698 in the bundle, or you just did a
Yes, 698 is in the bundle.
So for 698, I just wanted to understand how golfing is being promoted in the schools. So it didn't mention which students are participating and from which schools. So I made the assumption that it's citywide for all of our schools, but I don't think I've actually ever seen any promotions for students to play golf. Just curious about that.
So good evening. Golf is a citywide sport that our athletic director is recruiting from across schools to create one comprehensive golf team. And if we have more students who show interest through Family ID and recruiting, then we'll be able to create smaller teams that are germane to campuses.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Black, but do you know how he's recruiting?
So our primary recruiting has been through ADs and through phys ed at the secondary level. So our athletic directors are working with gym teachers to recruit, and then through the word of mouth and the previously engaged athletes.
Okay, I just want to put in a plug that we actually advertise it to parents as well, that it's an option, because that way there's a little bit more equity in the knowledge being shared among all students versus, versus only certain individuals knowing certain people and saying, oh, let's plug this student in and plug that student in. And there may be students that are not connected in sports right now, but that this may be something that they would be interested in attending. That's my only concern with wanting to understand how it's being advertised and students are being selected, but I would support it tonight.
Thank you.
So Dr. Black, let me just ask this question, or maybe to the superintendent. We talked about phys ed being one of those courses that our students are not taking. If they took one of these, if they participated in one of these sports, would that qualify for PE?
Can I request that be added to the question log so that our athletic director can look in and provide you an accurate response?
All right, Dr. Myers Smalls, can you respond to that? Do you know that?
You know what, Vice President Elliott, I'm trying to remember because you used to be, I think that is off the table now, that if you participate like in a varsity level sport.
Yes.
Sean, help me. I don't think that applies anymore. I think because they really want you to participate in physical education and not use the sport. I remember I used that exemption when I was in high school, but I don't think that applies anymore.
It was they wanted to make a distinction between physical education and athletics.
Yeah.
Separate things. There are some cases in which they can be a little flexible, but for the most part,
You don't get that waiver anymore.
they want to distinct that PE might be, you learn like life games. They have like courses like life skill games. So Frisbee, it might be a something that you learn in phys ed now because it's a lifelong sport. And if you just play basketball, then kids would only know basketball. So the state was really clear about that a couple of years ago.
Okay. That's an argument I can make, but I won't do it here.
No, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's one of those things where, yeah, yeah. I know some districts have done like during a season, like if a kid they're on a sports team and they needed the extra period in their class to make up math or something like that. Like there's been some flexibility within the school schedule where the kids might might do a packet on the sport while they're getting support in math. Like there's a way to do it that stays within the regulations that get at both ends of it if you need to. Let me put it that way.
Yeah. How many credits do you need for a PE?
It's half credit half a credit every year.
So two credits you need in order to be able to graduate. Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. So all in favor of resolution 694 through 698, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I almost voted.
Thank you. So we have the EPO Teaching and Learning Resolution 699. This is an authorization of additional pay. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Seconded.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, was there any questions? Let me just ask that. Was there any questions? All right, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any nays? I'm a nay because I always vote no on additional pay resolutions. All right, thank you. Resolution 700, Special Education, CSE/CPSE.
One quick second, Vice President Elliott.
Mm-hmm.
For 694 through 698, I know you say you always vote no on additional pay, but you said no only to 699. Are you
no for the other ones?
Or also 694?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Did I get a motion for resolution 700?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it carries. Human capital resolutions. I'm going to take these they're sort of choppy here. So 701, 704, and 707. 701 is a tenure resolution. 704 is to appoint a professional educator in a tenure area for a probationary period, and appoint to an administrative tenure area. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
No, I have questions. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Questions, Commissioner LeBron?
Yes. So first and foremost, I'm going to give my whole spiel. I am not voting for grant tenures for 10 years during the pandemic, not doing it. And I have been legally advised that I should not be doing that, but I will continue to do it and also tell the state to really look at that during this pandemic and should have put that on pause and allow people to kind of pick up where they were off. So my no vote tonight is not personal to these individuals. I just want to put that out there. But on 707, there's a line in there on an internship certificate for an individual. And I just need an understanding of what type of degree that is and what qualifies them to do the work. So.
Good evening, Commissioner. New York State Education Department District Leader Certificate. Before you get the full certificate, you get an internship certificate. And so after completing the requirements of the internship, you then apply for and get the next level certificate. And there are times where districts hire leaders to fulfill their role. And so the first several months of being in that role would count as their internship to ensure that they can get fully certified.
Thank you, Chris. And then just as a follow-up, what's the time frame for that? And I share based on the fact that we've been in the position of having had hired certain building leaders or administrators who did not have the proper certification were also in this interim stage, and then they never got it, and we went through this cycle before. And so I just want to understand when this individual will become certified, what the process will be, and what's the maximum level, if they're not certified, that they can stay employed in the role.
So it's usually just an additional semester that they're going through, and then depending on what additional requirements they would have, such as the certification exams, they would take those and pass those. So, you know, it could be that they finish the semester this summer and then take the exams. We have seen that the state education department exams can be challenging for some people. The building level exams are usually more challenging, and we've seen people have to retake those. And so it just depends on when they take and complete the exams. But I would imagine that this individual, we would potentially be looking at them to be fully certified by the end of the summer.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, but I just want to let Chris know I'll be highlighting that, because if I see that name come up again in a resolution or an executive session, I want to remember this conversation. Thank you.
All in favor of resolutions 701, 704, 704, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay to 701, yay to 704 and 707.
Okay, thank you. Get that, Kalia? Okay. Motion to approve resolution 712 through 722.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded.
All right. Are there any questions to any of those resolutions?
Yes.
Commissioner LeBron?
I'm going to request 714 go into executive session. In particular, we received an email that I know we're going to discuss an executive session tonight, and I wanted to make sure that there was no crossover between the topic and this resolution, and just ask legal for some clarity around that. Because I cannot disclose an individual's name, I'm requesting that it goes into executive session.
I can short circuit this a little bit. That name that you were advised on earlier in the day is not in this list.
Okay, so then my request to remove from executive session. We'll talk about the other person in executive session then. Thank you, Steve. And then I just had a question around 719. And I'm gonna pull it up because I wrote a note to myself. 719, there's a particular name in here, and it just, yeah, it was an amendment to the initial salary placement of a psychologist who jumped from a step 12 to a step 17, but there's no justification as to why we're giving an individual that step. And like, I just needed to understand that particular psychologist's salary increase. It just says amendment.
Should we discuss that in executive session as well then?
Yeah, I didn't say the person's name, but I'm pretty sure people can figure out a name. And so.
Yeah, I think it's best to take that in, regardless of the name. The details surrounding it probably should be discussed in executive session.
Okay, so then I'm going to request 719. Vice President Elliott is pulled from the vote right now to have discussions in executive session.
Okay. All right. And there was one question. Is that all the questions that you have, Commissioner?
Yes, thank you.
There's one question that I got. How can tenure be granted when a whole school year has been on hold? Chris, can you respond to that for the audience?
I'm sorry, was the question, how do we continue to grant tenure?
Yeah, how can tenure be granted when a whole school year has been on hold?
Sure. Well, the educators, when they're hired, their probationary period is set, and it's typically a 4-year probationary period. And throughout that probationary period, they're expected to serve well in the role and to meet the district's expectations. And through APPR, or the evaluation system, we take care to observe and evaluate coach, mentor, and support those educators, whether they're teaching assistants, teachers, or school administrators. And particularly with our teachers, they receive mentoring through the Career and Teaching program. At any rate, they are evaluated and observed. Their leaders are doing walkthroughs to see how they're doing. And so during COVID, those efforts continued. We still expected our teachers to serve students well. They had to adapt their teaching practices throughout that time. They continued to be evaluated, and we continued to seek out recommendations from their principals about whether or not they were worthy of earning tenure and being an investment that the district wanted to make in the future. So I think that encompasses why we continue to provide tenure during COVID.
Thank you, Chris. So I'm going to ask that all in favor for resolution 712 through 720, with the understanding that 719 we will discuss in executive session. So all in
we need
favor?
a motion and a second for that one.
Didn't I get a motion and a second already?
No, you talked about bundling it, but you didn't ask for the motion
All right.
yet.
So can I get a motion?
Motion.
And can I get a second?
Seconded.
All right.
Vice
So
President Elliott, I just wanted to just give a little bit of feedback. One, I want to request that we see the documentation that's being used in terms of the valuation for these tenures. So if you all remember, in the past, we would get from HR a detailed, Excel spreadsheet plus all of their ratings before. I have not seen those since COVID began. I just want to put that out there, but I have seen lots of tenure resolutions come up every month. Also, and again, this is nothing against the individuals, because I think we have an obligation to have that documentation given to us by administration, but there was no actual teaching over Zoom happening from March until June of last year. When we shut down, we asked teachers to upload the information for students to access it as we scrambled through the pandemic, and certainly no blame to them. I'm just saying we then started passing resolutions to tenure folks under that environment as well, which is why I keep, again, reiterating that the state should have really put a pause and a pen so that people are not penalized for the work that they've done and the ratings that they've received up to that point, but they can, like, again, pick up where they left off. But they've put us in this position where we as a board have to vote. But I will be requesting, and this is more for you all who are voting on these, to see the documentation and the evaluations.
So Commissioner LeBron, I'm wondering if we should send a letter to the state with regard to our concerns around tenure, granting tenure. Would you be willing to have some discussion around, perhaps we should talk with our legislators about that? And I see that
I would be down for that, but again, I want to reiterate, like, no educator should be penalized for this. It's just a matter of putting it on a hold. But furthermore, Vice President Elliott, we have an administration asking us as the board to vote for tenure, and we have not seen the evaluations and the justifications for those tenures the way we have in the past. So I just want to put that out there, because we continue to vote on them, but we don't have the documentation, and that should not have to, so that has nothing to do with the actual educator, teacher, or administrator who's up for tenure, because that's not their responsibility. That is the administration's responsibility, that we get that documentation and justification for the tenure to come up before us as a board.
All right. Dr. Jallo, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to add, as state monitor, I want to see the documentation too, along with any other APPR documentation you have available for this year. That's a requirement of the plan, and I would like to see that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jallo. Commissioner Malloy?
Thank you. Dr. Myers-Small, perhaps you can answer this for me, or perhaps Dr. Miller. On average, each year, how many tenure recommendations do we grant in any given year?
Many.
You'd
have to look up to get the actual number, but there's a lot.
I don't know that is really beneficial for board members to be looking at all of this APPR documentation. That's why we have an administrative staff. They make these recommendations and that's their job, right? So I don't know if we necessarily need to see that unless there are questions about if there's like some type of human resource or certification question, but it really isn't due to the board members' time to be looking through tenure recommendations.
Yeah, Commissioner Malloy, let me just, if I can interject, what we've done in the past is that we've had a spreadsheet of tenure, those personnel who are being proposed of tenure. So we haven't always had their employment file, although if we needed it, we can request it. But the employee file does not come along with just the spreadsheet of the names. There is a, and this was done, I don't know if it was done, Commissioner LeBron, while Superintendent Myers-Small was here. It was done with the previous superintendent and the previous HIC chief, that there was an Excel spreadsheet of the names and other information. In fact, I think, Chris, one of your staff can help you with that because they also was a part of that process as well, that we would go over those in executive session. So it's not a bundle of information that we're going to receive. It's a spreadsheet. They have certain questions on there, like their year, their ratings for 2 or 3 years, 3 years, maybe a 4th year. So that was the information that Commissioner LeBron was speaking of that we would normally get to discuss. And we would go in into executive session in order to review that. Does that help, Commissioner Malloy?
I understand the process quite well.
Oh, okay.
Teacher, thanks, Commissioner. No, I think that, you know, we can ask for maybe the documentation sooner, but I just want to also reiterate that education has not been on hold this year. Teachers have been teaching during the pandemic. So education has not been on hold. It's not ideal. It's not an ideal situation, but the public needs to know that teaching has been occurring. And it's been happening everywhere. So there isn't anything on hold right now.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Malloy.
I do want to clarify. So again, March of last year through June, we were not prepared as a district nor any other district for the shutdown that occurred. And kids were not learning online over Zoom. Kids were given information online, given a week to complete packages, and we passed tenures without evidence of any of the actual observations, how people were evaluated in a non-virtual world. It wasn't, we can't even say it was a virtual world from May through June. Now, September through now, yes, people are teaching. I want to see the evidence that administrators are doing their due diligence. I want to see the evaluations, and this board, from the moment I got onto the school board, has always been provided the evidence. And you're right, Commissioner Elliott, it was our previous HCI person and our previous 3 other superintendents that came before in these 3 years I've been here. But that was always presented to this board. If you as a board member want to vote on something blindly, be my guest. I will not be voting blindly on something especially as serious as tenure, because that is a decision that we are putting an educator in front of Black and brown kids for a number of years. And I'm not doing that unless I see evidence, and that administration is also doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I just want to put that on record. This is not a jab to any educator individually, but I have a job to do as a commissioner, and I'm going to do my job with due diligence. And that certainly includes looking at the data around tenures.
You're muted.
I'm muted. Yeah. So we've got the motion and we've got the second on these resolutions, correct? Okay, so all in favor of resolution 712 through 720, excluding 719. Do I have that correct? All right. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And all any opposition, any opposing? Commissioner LeBron, did you want to oppose?
No, there's no tenures in that group. The next one coming up is the tenure.
All right. Okay, very good. Thank you. So can I get a motion to discuss resolution. Cal, just remind me, did we do 721 and 722?
No.
We did not. Okay, those should have been included in that. Anyway, can I get a motion for resolution 721 through 720 and 722? Excuse me.
Second.
Okay, any questions on those two resolutions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, it carries. Can I get a motion for resolution 726? Is the East High School EPO granted tenure? Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any questions on the resolution 726? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
All right, thank you. The next set of resolutions is operations, educational facility, resolution 727 through 735. Can I get a motion for those resolutions?
Move.
Can I get a second?
Seconded.
Are there any questions on these resolutions? Okay, all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Resolution 737. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Seconded.
Any questions on resolution 737, authorization to enter into an agreement? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Gonna be a nay for me.
Okay, thank you. Resolutions 738 through 741. Can I get a motion to approve?
Madam Chair, if we could skip 740 so that we could waive the requirements first.
Yes, Commissioner. So resolution 738, 739, and 741. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, Commissioner Powell, I'll turn it over to you for resolution 740.
I'm just going to make a motion to waive the requirements of policy 2410, which requires 3 stages of information, discussion, and discussion before action, because we inadvertently omitted the discussion item during last special meeting.
So is there a motion?
That's a motion.
All right, can I get a second? Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, Commissioner Clark, all those in favor?
Aye.
We're talking about suspending the policy, so the
Yeah,
correct?
we're only talking about
Suspending the
waiving
policy.
at this point, yes.
Right, right. And did all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any nays? Okay.
And
So we
Madam
go,
Chair, if I could now put the resolution 740 on the table.
yes,
Motion.
Motion.
yes. Can I get a second?
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And I'm a no to that one. You got the vote, Kalia? Okay. So it looks like there's no unfinished business. And Commissioner Powell, you are going to table the, are you asking for a table?
I'm sorry, Vice President Elliott.
I would
did
like
we
to
vote
ask
on
that we
7?
postpone, I'd like to ask
Yeah,
that we postpone the
Commissioner
discussion.
Powell, I think there's just a
clarity
question that
question
Commissioner
on
LeBron has about the process.
738, 739, and resolution 741. Did we vote on those?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
so no, so I apologize. I thought we were voting on 740 and that you were giving Commissioner Powell the motion to waive policy 2410 so that we could vote on 740. So
We did do that.
We did do that as well.
So yeah, but I need to go back. So I do have a comment on 741. I'm not voting for that. That's a no for me. And on record, I would like Dinopoli's office, our state auditing office, to give an opinion on this resolution and what's happening in this resolution in writing on record. I will also put it in writing and make the formal request, but I want to put it verbally on record for this. I'm voting no, and I'm asking the state to give us an opinion on this resolution and what's happening in this resolution. And then also just on 739, I wasn't a, can we get a copy of the calendar that we're approving?
And the only thing, I hope we're not starting school before Labor Day.
I don't even know what's on the calendar. I just want to put it out there. So I want to support it, but I haven't seen it. So I'm going to vote no on that for tonight as well.
Superintendent Myers-Small, can you have that forwarded out?
Yeah, I thought we provided that. I'll go back, sure.
So do we want to wait and vote on that until we see it? Has any of the other commissioners had an opportunity to review the calendar?
Steve, who has the copy? Is that you? I thought we gave a copy.
So do we have to, we voted on this, but do we have to, can we table this resolution until we actually get the calendar?
Madam Chair, you would have to have a motion to reconsider.
And who has the copy? Can I, that's what I'm trying
I
to.
can forward it.
Okay.
So since I'm voting no on it, I think I can actually bring it back up to reconsider as a motion. So I'm motioning it for it to be reconsidered. And then you need a second and folks need to vote to reopen that up.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. Can we get a second for that? We're talking about resolution 739, the school calendar. Did somebody second?
Yeah, can't hear me. I did.
Oh, okay. All right. All in favor? So we're going to.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I have a question on that motion. I mean, on the
resolution.
To the superintendent, what would the impact be of delaying this vote? Is it, would we miss some publication dates, or is there any other implication for delaying a decision on the calendar?
No, I don't think so. I think just the only thing, some families, make vacation plans sooner rather than later for the summer. But I think what is important is to note, and again, I apologize. I honestly thought you had this because you want to see it. We do address Juneteenth. So I want to make sure.
Share the document if you'd like for me to post it.
Pardon?
I can share the document on screen if you'd like for me to post it.
Would that be okay?
That'd be okay with me. Is that okay with the rest of the commissioners? Yes.
Thanks, Marisol. I apologize. This should have been. So as you can see, Vice President Elliott, after Labor Day.
Okay.
Okay. Then the 8th. So we have Superintendent's Conference Day on the 7th. School starts on the 8th. We've got Columbus Day. I say Indigenous Peoples Day. Parent-teacher conferences, and then parent elementary and secondary. We have Veterans Day and Thanksgiving. And if you scroll down to December, you'll see where Christmas is observed, but then where recess, wait, up a little, Marisol. Yep. Okay. Then in January, MLK Day, testing. Then you have President's Day and President's Recess in February. And again, this is pretty much standard with just off a day or two because of just the shift. But again, the new piece, the new element in the calendar certainly is June 20th, Juneteenth observance, as that's mandated.
Any questions to the superintendent about the calendar?
And again, I apologize. I honestly thought you all had it.
Yeah.
That's our fault.
So do we need to lift that motion from the floor and go back to asking for approval for resolution 739? How do we do that? Steve, let me get your advice on that.
Kalia, where is it?
So so right now there was a vote 6-0 with Commissioner Powell and Commissioner Malloy seconding for 738, 739, and 741. But then we did a motion to reconsider, and that was motioned by Commissioner LeBron and seconded by Commissioner Adams. There hasn't been a vote on reconsidering that yet.
And we're talking specifically about 739.
About 739,
yes.
Okay, well, I suppose that if the commissioner who moved to reconsider it does not feel that it needs to be reconsidered, she could withdraw her motion to reconsider and we can just let the vote stand.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the cleanest way. However, I'm not going to deny any commissioners their opportunity to have their say.
No, that would be me. I'm fine, Vice President Elliott, with removing my motion to reconsider because we've at least seen it, but I still would like a copy to have some time to review it as well.
We'll make sure we get that out in the Friday.
Of course. And then just for the record, Kalia, you do have me voting no on 741.
Yes, I do.
Thank
yes.
you.
Mm-hmm.
So the vote stands for 739, that it did get approved, it did pass. Okay.
Yes, so 738, 739, and 741 were voted on. Commissioner Powell, Commissioner Malloy seconding. 738, 739 were voted 6-0, and then 741 was 6-1 with Commissioner LeBron declining.
And 740, where are we with 740?
And 740, we have a motion to, we had the motion to waive the requirements, and that was voted on, and we had the vote on the actual policy, and that was voted on as well with your no vote.
All right. Thank you. So we have gone through all of the resolutions. There's no unfinished business. Commissioner Powell, you want to discuss the OPEB committed fund resolution?
Yeah, thanks. So this was put under new business based on the conversations of our last special meeting. And so that's the primary reason that it's on the agenda. I am prepared to talk about it, but my concern is that the administration isn't ready. And so I'm prepared to postpone the discussion if we could get a new date certain. For instance, next month's business meeting.
Okay, so.
And that's the prerogative of the chair to set the agenda.
That's fair for the administration if you want that particular input.
I would like to say though that you'll find anyone who's willing to put in the time to read the presentation that was provided. The third to last slide does include a summary of the New York State Comptroller's reports and everything they've had to say about fund balance, and it can be summarized in less than a minute. The Comptroller's Report B20-2-5 of June 2020 recommends that we comply with the board's fund balance policy and restore necessary reserves. And however, in the same report it says, and I quote, "We do not offer comments or make specific recommendations on public policy decisions." And that position was very clear and obvious in the auditor's email response provided by Commissioner LeBron earlier today. They do not weigh in on the policymaking aspect. So we can ask for an opinion or whatever, but I don't think you're going to get anything out other than what you've already gotten in the email that Commissioner LeBron forwarded to all board members.
All right, thank you, Commissioner
So
Palmer.
I actually do want to comment on that. So yes, they, as I noted in the email, they cannot come to this public meeting and give public comment. However, they can meet with commissioners in groups of 2 or 3. So I will be working with Kalia and the state auditor's office. I don't want a summary of the reports if I can hear it from them directly. And they certainly have lots of knowledge, information, and also opinions on this piece. So I will be working with Kalia to get some dates out for commissioners, and we can schedule 2 to 3 at a time with them directly to get feedback from them directly. I've also asked Dr. Jallo and Superintendent Leslie Myers-Smalls and our CFO to be a part of those meetings as well, so that everybody's hearing the same information at the same time in small groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner LeBron. So it looks like there's nothing else for us to discuss in public. So I'm going to ask for a motion to go into executive session.
Motion to go into executive session.
To discuss a couple of personnel matters and to discuss matters related to employment of particular individuals. So I got a motion from Commissioner LeBron. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. So to our audience, we're going to be going into executive session. And when we're coming out, we're going to just say goodbye. But again, just want to acknowledge the young women who were recognized with the Susan B. Anthony Award. They were phenomenal. And it does not mean that our other students are not phenomenal. And I'm looking forward to even greater things that our students are doing and will be doing. And so with that, we'll say good night. Thank you. We've reconvened into open session, and so I'm going to need a motion to approve resolution 719 and 742. Can I get a motion?
I'll move it.
Okay, we got someone to move it and someone to second. Cal, you pick.
I got it.
Any questions on those resolutions? All in favor? To
Aye.
approve?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed to those resolutions?
719 yes and 742 no.
Okay. And so the only thing that we have left is to do our survey. So Cal, you would put that survey up.
Chair was the bomb.
For some reason,
Chair was
can y'all
the
hear me?
bomb.
Who was the bomb?
The chair.
Oh, I know. I get sort of choppy trying to do all this stuff.
I agree, though. I agree.
And
So y'all know what to do, right? Number 10.
Right.
Yeah.
Ricardo. Commissioner Adams. Sorry. Happy belated birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Oh, yes. Happy birthday, Commissioner Adams.
Indeed.
Wakanda forever. Love you, man.
Did we do a motion to adjourn?
Not yet. Did we get all of the resolutions of the surveys?
Not quite yet.
I never got.
You never got it? Commissioner Adams, you never got it?
He's freezing.
Yeah.
Nope.
All right. Well, that means you're the last person I'm waiting on. I'm not really sure why you didn't get it. We'll take that another time. Okay. We can end the survey.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Okay.
We need a
Can
second.
you hear me now?
Yeah, I need a second. We can hear you now a little bit, Commissioner Adams.
Commissioner Malloy, I think, seconded.
Okay. So all in favor to adjourn?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good night, everybody. Have a good